Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about trouble and trending irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up, a concise show dedicated to bringing you the most relevant, independent news as we see it from the last 24 hours.
Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Thank you for joining me. Some pretty, even to me, shocking developments in the last couple of days, 24 plus hours. It's really incredible to see some of these things, specifically from RFK Jr. Even more than that, though, we talked about a few different things this morning on AM Wake Up. It's just, as much as I very clearly my opinion was showing that I mean, whether it's government in general or RFK in particular, that I wasn't hopeful. I mean, I hoped that they were right about him, but I just wasn't feeling that was the right, based on the Israel stance, different deviations since kind of overlapping with Trump. I didn't feel like it was going to go the way they thought it did. Nonetheless, I'm still pretty let down because as we've been talking about, I want to believe that these people could ultimately make the change that a lot of their supporters think they are capable of doing. I think our history shows that we have every right to be pessimistic when it comes to what government promises us, but I still wanted that to happen. And I still hoped, and it still may tomorrow, the next day, maybe it'll turn tomorrow and everything will change. Right now, I'm pretty let down with two main things that came out from RFK Jr. That is his stance around the MMR vaccine and not what people will assume based on the partisan retort to the fact that you didn't read this article. No, people are missing the plot. They've lost the plot, missing the point, because they're, in my opinion, being kind of caught by the different, absolute defense of RFK no matter what, or he's always bad, anti-vaxxer maniac. Neither of those things are true. My concern with this is his long work on the MMR vaccine in particular, going back to the Vax documentary, his work on this in general, the statements he's made, the groups the places he's spoken at about this in particular. And for him to do anything other than remove that shot now that he has that power, to me, is hypocrisy. Now, you can disagree with that, of course. Maybe there's different, but let me put it this way before we get into it all. If your argument is that he's being bound, somebody won't let him do that. The problem there is that those are two separate conversations. Allowing the MMR vaccine to be given to children, despite him telling us for years that this is a deadly, dangerous, bad ingredients, causes autism, is hypocrisy. Even if you think he's not being allowed to do that. If you were in his shoes with what you want to believe he is, him not saying that is just as bad. Even if you think he's, like, let's just even say he's being threatened The problem is that it ultimately, that proves two things to me, that we're in a position that we are not capable of changing through our broken political system or maybe any political system, as well as the fact that it will, unless we make radical changes in the way we view the government with our lives, it'll never be possible. And so RFK Jr. coming out and telling people the MMR vaccine is an option, I think is hypocrisy. Yes, he did discuss different things that can be taken, and I'll point out those as positive because I agree with that. Different than what we saw last. But it's not always better than the other side, right? That's the way they trap you in thinking this is all we can get. That's actually being blackpilled. It's about recognizing what we want and comparing that to what's happening. And that rarely happens in the partisan field right now. The other part of this is his shocking attack on free speech. It's not shocking in the sense that it's new, but for him and from the HHS position to come out and tell us that anti-Semitism is the scourge and the battle and the plague of our lifetime. Very clearly trying to make it feel like it's something in his wheelhouse, even though that's pretty unprecedented as far as I can tell for someone in that position to spearhead, let alone speak about, let alone spearhead, or I guess you'd say it the first way, an effort to go after anti-Semitism. That's not even getting into the conversation, which we will, that it's protected as free speech. Not a violent attack, not anything other than expressing opinions, and most of which aren't even actually what they claim they are, and we'll go over that as well. Now, I'm let down because I really did want that to be something different from him. At the very least, the theater of some kind of back and forth of Trump and him. Nope, it seems right now so far that we've been played. The Epstein documents, we're going to go over that as well, where that currently is at. A pretty important article, I think, about really what we've already been proving to you. That's why I think it's important to highlight of DOGE basically lying to you about the things they're doing on that website. And that doesn't mean that every single thing on there is false. I frankly don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of things they're slashing, many of which I agree with. The problem is that if we're being misled, or even worse, that they're just being clumsy with it, it really makes you wonder what's actually happening with all this, especially with all the weird, concerning, opaque actions, with all of their very alarming, immediate, and invasive connections to foreign governments. Just this weird, a very weird time right now. And I'd like to believe that most people out there are very, very uncomfortable with this and just don't know who to talk to, don't know where to turn, because you have this side or that side. At least that's how it really feels. And that's like the COVID-19 dynamic as well. There's a few other things we're going to get to. I started with that clip for a reason, because I'm sure you've seen that montage going around, which is ridiculous and embarrassing and should show you exactly what we've always been telling you, that your government and the partisan field is rife with manipulation. At this point, you're getting a very clear example of the Democrat side. We'll show you that in a minute. The problem, though, is that, as usual, it's framed as if this is the problem, that side, and we're the heroes saving you from that side, even though they're all doing it all the time. And it's one of the biggest tricks happening right now. For some, I'd like to believe not majority. I don't know how a majority could even fall for something so simple as reverse psychology, but ultimately, where you're just basically highlighting a problem and making it seem like one side of it, and then some kind of subconscious game is where that means he's not on that side. That means he is the good guy, but half the time without even them saying that. And then they go on to do all the things that we thought we were fighting. But he said it. He shared that meme, so we're good. But clearly, I think most people don't feel that way. But we're going to overlap with the bird flu part as well. A couple updates on that as it rolls into the other part of that, as well as for some foreign policy discussion kind of on the tail end of the anti-Semitism point. Really, I was going to get into more around Israel in general, but I put it off until the next show. But I have a few points to touch on at the end. But really just this focus for today around how these two things are really shifting quite a lot in this country. And I think really, guys, as always, come to your own conclusions about it. But I feel like these are major, major tipping points. Both of these actions from RFK, more than anything, it really, they've already been showing you this direction. Him doing so just kind of cements the problem for me. That not only is it happening, but he, as an entity that represented some kind of a shift of what Trump might have been doing otherwise, does not seem to be taking place. Not, again, it's not all, I mean, they're like, for example, with the, at least the discussion of fluoride, the sunscreen part. These are things that they're good to call attention to, but it's about the full picture and ultimately the direction we're being taken in. Like, hypothetically speaking, if we end up in some kind of Israel-controlled technocratic prison, but hey, we don't have cancerous sunscreen, we're good. You know, it's about looking at the way this all goes. Yes, we still want that to happen, but we can't lose sight of the big problem, what's really going on around us. So starting with that point, the opening point from which you've all seen, It's just that, they're a threat to our democracy. And the point to make with that video, guys, that's bipartisan. Take time and look through that. That's Fox, that's left and right and all over the place, small and large. And that's an old video. It just shows you how long this has been going on, where your media, and it's not some new story that DOGE revealed to you. It's been happening left and right for a very long time, if not ever. So when this comes out, which I do think is worthy of sharing and embarrassing for specifically the Democrats, which you'd wonder why this even happens anymore, unless they're being forced to do so by a foreign entity that has control over what they do. I don't even think that's what this is, but it's just, how do you explain all of them in a time where they know we're all paying attention, putting out on their accounts that we're watching the same exact statement, video, at this point, even with left or right, it really makes you wonder whether in some way they want you to see this stuff. And what would that mean? It's at least as a thought experiment. Ask yourself what that would look like. What would make sense? If they wanted us to see that, why would that be? Who benefits from that? I don't even know. It's just a good thing to do. Now, aside from that hypothetical, it appears as if they just got caught doing what they always do, which is the Occam's razor, simplest explanation tends to be the correct one. And I think that probably is the case, but are they really that stupid? So let's just play that first. So coming off the tail of the video we just played to start, just all of them repeating the same thing, acting like they're reporting naturally. And that's not, this is I'm going to play the big one. There's been multiple examples. It started with a few of them like this, and it went up to more and more and more. It is really wild. So here's that video. It's not that long.
And I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Now, I actually will say, because there's so many overlapping, it's actually more difficult to notice that they're basically exactly the same thing. There's a slight deviations in like inflection and tone and maybe a word here and there. But if you watch the smaller versions of it, I mean, it's the same speech. They're saying the same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're holding the mic the same way. It is wild. It's almost not worth watching with this because it just gets kind of like a mumbling background. But what's even more crazy to me is, I mean, did they all go? Why are they all holding a mic the same? There's some kind of more than usual coordination to this. I mean, that's what I'll ultimately leave that, because that's what it looks. It's the same. I mean, look, bringing up the same screenshot, making the same point. That's crazy. I really want to stress, though, guys, if you're in some weird part of if you somehow are on the mind that this is unique to the Democrats, my God, I mean, have you not been paying attention? Now, frustratingly enough, I have multiple things happening today. I want to make sure I got to a show. I didn't have time to go. I'm going to make a point to go back. And if you're listening right now, please send them to me, because you know that we've played these on the show and talked about it. The different times we've seen visual montages just like that of different points from the Republicans, or more importantly, the one I was actually looking for today, and I have the reference to it, but I wasn't able to find it, was the ubiquitous, from the Trump administration, Elon Musk, Twitter dynamic forward. We have seen many examples where they've come out and said exactly the same thing, the same words, same spacing, and there's a screen of 45 of them, all the same kind of "we are the media now" people. Now, same point, right? It wouldn't, whether it's a video or tweets, it's the same concept. And anybody who is actually objective and nonpartisan is well aware this has been a major thing. We saw the whole, now I'm forgetting the name of that group. Was it, whatever the group was that basically they were caught being financed by this entity. There was all these Republican leaders. We've seen that corporate mainstream alternative media people. We saw the same thing happen on the left side before. We've seen this many times. We saw the whole political thing came out, but the USAID dynamic, which is important to consider. But at the same time, we made the argument, and you could prove, like I've already done, that it wasn't unique to one type of media, or the idea that it's really just a kind of a cover story in a lot of ways. They use woke mindsets or whatever else to get the right kind of propaganda over, or regime change. But on top of that, we already showed you right after that huge scandalous deal, the Trump administration was still funding groups like Reuters Newswire services for different parts of their government. Didn't you just make a 3-day case why that was massively important, and then no, it doesn't matter because now Trump's doing it? It's crazy. I've gone over this in the show. We've covered it. I've given you source material, but of course that doesn't go anywhere, because it's not the big partisan draw. But clearly, guys, this is something that is, and I'm just scrolling down to show you her extension of this, where she caught that there was, oh, wow, there's a lot more of them. Here are some points I want to share. First, just to show you that the way that this gets kind of propelled, right? Insurrection Barbie, it's just pretty common funnel, kind of, what do you call it? I'm blanking on the good word I was going to use there. Like a funnel, like a line between these, like a tunnel between, gosh, there's a better word for that. A something line where you can see the kind of coordination. And it doesn't have to be that they're doing it on purpose, but you can see that people like this, who, guys, go back to look at what these people's followers were like Insurrection Barbie before this all happened, and look now, it's wild. They're all in the million category here after this kind of constant cycle. But they point to something, he points to something, then it gets shared and kind of continues to cycle around, then it overtakes it, then he recaptures it, and it recaptures again. And it's a way to control the narrative. And look, the point is, this is actually an important point, not new by any stretch of the imagination. But think about what else is happening right now. And I'm going to make a couple more points quickly after this DOGE article about things that were being kind of rejectively, like, you'll look at these accounts we're going to go over in a minute as we then get into the main points about what's being the MMR vaccine, and ask yourself why none of that's being really discussed. They're basically talking about the Ukraine meeting and acting like suddenly discovering out of nowhere, even though it's been talked about for years now, that they've been forcing people to go to Ukraine, that they're actually bad people, that Zelensky's not a good guy. Funny how even left and right in the partisanship, that's breaking news today. I mean, where have everybody been? But of course, they're all hyping back and forth. And now Lindsey Graham is like, they need elections, and that's why they're problem. Oh, you mean Lindsey Graham that went there and funded them and made this all happen? But now he's upset, even though he told you you should pay them to have elections. You guys, they're all playing you. And they know exactly what they're doing because they know there's a group of people out there that will not balk at anything they say. As long as they get them mobilized, they can pretend that's the majority. That's what they do today. So the point is that you're not going to find any of them really talking about the MMR point, the measles dynamic, unless something else, or even the point of him saying a fundamentally unconstitutional stance of claiming that they're going to stop you or that you're not allowed to be anti-Semitic, even though we can prove that the ADL has called anything Palestinian anti-Semitic. That's been proven 4 times over. So now they're basically telling you can't support Palestine. But all they're really saying is you can't say what you want if it bumps up against a foreign country that totally isn't in control of your speech. Good times. And they're not going to talk about any of that as they lurch into things about, somewhat important topics that are only meant to get you outraged about certain political leanings. Oh, and I was going to show you this too. So the idea that things get repeated, I just kind of quickly do this. Take these tweets that they share on a daily basis and just copy it and search. And you will find identical shares like this from people that follow them, and just repost it, share the same thing. Not the same thing as all of them repeating that. It was just one of the things I was beginning to get into, and then I got pulled away to the rest of the show. I was going to try to line this up and show more of that, but I'm going to come back to it. But here's one good example. And this is something that was we saw with the Epstein thing. Now, again, hope that if you're out there and you find there's these kind of collages of screenshots that were going around that showed from previous examples of the same thing, saying the same thing in the same way, please send it to me. Here's an example from the quartering, just pointing at the DC Drano account. MAGA influencer who got the quote Epstein files, which is really nothing at this point, caught lying twice and posting an obvious prepared statement. Now that turns into 3 actually, which I think is interesting. And he goes, "Oof, never trust one of these people again." Now, here's the point he's highlighting. It goes, he's talking about a post that they all shared that was exactly the same. And he goes, "No, wrote that post myself. Nobody gave us those talking points. Can't help if others share it." Okay, that sounds like that might be logical, right? Except there's a problem there. Look at the fact check. From Twitter, right? It says Chad Prather could not have copied and pasted Rogan O'Handley's post, that's DC Drano, as Chad, the first person, made his statement 13 minutes before his. Oops. Think about how silly it would be to make that statement. Well, actually, no, it's a follow-up. So he posted that before the fact check was there. When being criticized about sharing the same thing. So it's either the DC Drano copied it from him, because that's how the timing worked out, or he wasn't even aware he was given the same thing to say. I mean, how else do you really explain that? So what's funny about this is Quartering calls him out and he responds going, "False once again. I wrote that post on my own, posted it, deleted it after 10 minutes, then reposted it again a little later." Ah, okay. I'd love for that to be proven. But then he goes, "Nope." Just say fact check. If he wrote it 13 minutes before, it says deleted it 10 minutes after, well, suddenly that timing still doesn't work out. So you can make up your own mind about how weird that all feels and how interesting it is that these people, the Epstein phase 1 document was a bunch of blacked out pages and they're still acting like they're going somewhere with this. And it hasn't resolved yet. We'll get to that in a second. But if you're pretending right now like any of this is lining up the way you planned or you thought it would, you're lying to yourself. And if your only answer is it's because the Democrat FBI is stopping it from happening, you mean Trump's administration? The current administration is stopping the current administration from showing things to the current administration? That's fantastic. Oh, and if you really think there is some holdover entity, I'd love to find out who that was. Are you going to tell me that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, even though they cited one individual, are not able to tell you that person's name? I thought we were fighting the deep state, guys, not putting them to the side and letting them gradually back into the background like Homer Simpson in the bushes. But yeah, it's all I don't know, grabbing on just one of their mantras they're saying. It's just, I mean, I guess you can sense my frustration with how silly this all is right now and how obvious it is that anybody with honesty is able to go, yeah, that's pretty dishonest. That doesn't line up. So it's just, in being objective, you have to do that. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt when you're going through that process. But trust me, it's infuriating when it's this crazy. Now, I want to point out one thing in that vein of thought that I thought was interesting. You saw this, you briefly pointed to this today, I think, or one of the last shows with AM Wake Up, and I didn't really look into it that much because I frankly thought that the whole thing from the beginning with Tucker Carlson and Fox was very, very weird. The fact that no one ever really proved that he even got removed. Remember, the point was he was under contract with Fox when he started the new thing. That was very publicly discussed. How in the world do you think Fox would allow that unless it was what they wanted is beyond me. But whatever. Something I'm missing certainly possibly explains it. Now it comes back around where the group that he is working with, I think it's called Red something. Where was it? Where was it? It's right down here. Red Seat Ventures gets bought by Fox. Now, to be objective, as they'll write in this fact check, but I actually think it's funny because the usual Republican response is, fact check. Oh, that's fake, Democrat fake news. Oh, interesting. Well, here's a Newsweek fact check that says that you're right about that. So we're supposed to reverse it and claim the opposite? Isn't that the way the reverse psychology game works? But what it's telling you in here is that clearly this is a company that was bought under them, but arguably there's no proof that they're necessarily controlled by this. They're just, Fox now owns the entity that gives them money. But, there's no way that could possibly influence how that works out, right? Now, I'm going to be the first to say objectively that certainly could be the case, that they don't have any influence, especially if Tucker Carlson and the other person we'll reference don't want that to happen and put their foot down, sure. But we can't see that. We can't prove that. It's based on their word. So again, if you have consistent logic, if you were flipping out, and rightly so, about the Politico aspect, the Reuters point, or any number of these aspects where you can see USAID or any other government thing, or just, my point is not necessarily government, but just some kind of funding aspect that you find interesting or you find problematic. Like, you just take this exact thing and flip it around to some major Democrat influencer that pretends they weren't part of CNN anymore. You know exactly how this would go. And it would also be assumption, right? Neither of them should happen. You should look into it and be objective about it. But let me show you why it's just about hypocrisy and the logic. As it says, claims appeared this week that suggested Fox had made a U-turn of sorts with their former host, buying the company behind his podcast. Like that alone, guys, come on. Again, I'm not saying that proves that that's the case, but they don't own his podcast and he's somehow not going to, they can't apply pressure. If they wanted to, they could. I believe that was always the case. I don't think any of these people are actually in the interest of independent news based on what's most important. That's my opinion, though. I think really their actions over the years and statements in front of judges where they say they all do it for a show, it all adds up. But it says a Monday post from X, Twitter, by user Insurrection Barbie was viewed 259,000 times. Fox News just purchased Red Seat Ventures with the digital media company behind the podcast of Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly. Oh, isn't that strange? The two that bombastically pulled away suddenly get possibly brought right back in, almost like they were never gone. But it says responses to the news and social media posts indicate that some believe the deal would bring Carlson back under the auspices of Fox in spite of their falling out, or if that's even what happened. I mean, you could sense from my tone that I think that there's very much a reason to ask whether this is the case. And just my suspicion in all things, partisan included, left or right, that's something that historically, that probably is the way it works out. That's how my mind works. But I'm never going to act like we know that for sure. Right now, that all we know is that it's suspicious. But it says, while Fox has purchased Red Seat Ventures, which provides supportive services to Carlson's podcast, the company will continue operating independently within the Fox Corporation's To Be Media group. So Is it common for something like Fox, a gigantic conglomerate, or actually, I forget what's the name of within another conglomerate, to buy a company and then just let them independently do what they like? Because that's how that works, right? I mean, even if it's profiting, that's not how these companies work. That's my opinion. Look it up for yourself. And it says the talent that works with Red Seat will not be employed by Fox. Well, that's probably an actual statement, or accurate, because they're not. They're employed by Red Seat, and Red Seat is influenced by Fox, and you can see how this works. Red Seat Ventures offers production support and helps monetize podcasts like Carlson's. Yeah, money. So money is the central, rug that can be pulled in any conversation we're talking about, right? That is how people are influenced, how they're controlled, how they're lied, or, on top of other very serious things. And it says, as well as fellow former Fox News hosts Kelly and O'Reilly. And it says, Kelly, in response to a Reuters article saying the deal would bring O'Reilly, Kelly, and Carlson back into Murdoch's fold, Murdoch being one of the people we were referencing there, said, no, it doesn't. We're 100% independent. It's all capital, so they must be true. Fox bought a company that sells our ads, period. Right, so they now control your revenue stream, because that's not obviously a concern, right? It just seems silly. Like, obviously, if you're going to be honest about this, you would address the, yes, I get it. Clearly, if this was happening to the Democrats, we would call it out. But here, let me prove to you why that's not the case. But not that they have to do that. I'm just saying it does not feel honest to me. The Reuters article acknowledged the editorial independence Kelly, Carlson, and Red Seat Ventures' other podcast hosts would retain. Because they said so is the point, not because you could prove that. But good times. So realistically, if you've been following the show, we've been suspicious about that from the moment he supposedly left Fox. And now, arguably, you could draw a line around this, through it, and simply argue that it never happened. And this was all a propaganda manipulation tactic from state-influenced, if not controlled, media platforms that have basically already failed financially years ago and have been propped up by the government. Am I missing something? Why would that not be a very logical thing, especially if this was about a Democrat? For the people that only look at it from one side. But my point is, I think that's important to think about all of this. And so right now, this whole mainstream alternative media field seems to be pulling all of its punches in the most important ways, especially, which you'll get in any partisan side, but more than ever today, I think it's more than just partisan. But my point is, you'll get it in particular around the things that they should be holding, if they were honest, to account the most, which is their people, right? The fight against the deep state, slashing the government fund. Like, if those things start teetering, faltering, if it shows that that's not the way it's going, wouldn't they, if they were honest, be the first ones to call it out? And I will make the point, look on Twitter. A lot of them are showing you that. A lot of them in a positive way are out there going, whoa, no way. This is this is a line that's been crossed. Recognize that. That means they have integrity. And that doesn't mean that other people who disagree with them don't. Maybe they just have a different opinion. My point is that people who have spent years telling you that this is where it would be, that this is bad, that these things are bad, that RFK is going to help us stop them, and now are defending it. Remember that. And as well, remember the ones that have the integrity to stand up and go, okay, I told you this was going to change. Now it's not, at least right now. This is a step in the wrong direction. So instead of doing that, you're going to get a lot of stuff like this, which I also find this interesting. But what you get from stuff like this, as I keep talking about, and guys, this is Twitter files for you. Never when I say that am I saying I know for a fact, or I'm not, in this case, I'm saying that I don't. But usually when I say that, I'm not saying for sure we know it's not true. I don't, right now, my point is this seems like it's up in the air. When a Twitter files point, it means that there is no source material. So certainly could be true. And if you wanted to take the time to do some background work and look into it and try to just, guess at where they got the screenshot or find, the point is 14 million views, almost 15 million. And it says in the last week, and this is from Scott Praisler, Pennsylvania Democrats gained 15,242 active voters. The majority of those came out of Philadelphia. It said Philadelphia State Department. And you explain how Philadelphia County gained 15,000 active Democrats in 1 week? No, I don't know. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if that's the right number. I don't know if that number is explained by something else, or maybe they're all. The point is, it's people who are taking this tweet at the screenshot and statements with nothing to back it up are stupid, even if it turns out to be correct. You are falling into that trap. Now, let's just say it is accurate. Wouldn't that be important? Of course it would be. And again, same point as the beginning. Are you of the mind that only Democrats are manipulating vote counts, are lying about the elections? What world do we live in? It teeter-totters every single time. It's just the way that they apply the single lens. The partisans do. I'm like to believe that most people nonpartisan out there are very aware that this is a bipartisan manipulation if your vote translates at all. But that's not the main point here. A screenshot and some text with nothing to back it up. Anybody honest would be like, okay, that's interesting, but I'd like to know where that came from, right? Shady, Elon Musk says. Instantly giving it 14 million views. On top, well, technically, I'm willing to bet you that didn't have 14 million views before he did that. My point, though, is that is, I mean, what's shady? Did you look at the evidence, Elon Musk? You have the biggest influence on a conversation that I've ever seen in human existence? I mean, think about how much influence he has on at least the United States conversation, whether people like him or not. And when you do that, and you have a right to do it, free speech, but let's not forget that he's part of the government. Which, I mean, all of these things add up to the fact that you should show some responsibility. And I don't even think it's about not caring. I think it's about knowingly trying to go, look at this, look over there, look, ooh, bad Democrats, ooh, look over there, Muslims, and look, and all of a sudden, people scream about things for the wrong reasons for 2 days straight. Now, I haven't seen that happen, but here, in that post right there, here's Pam Bondi, for example. Oh, and I did want to do this really quickly. Just to take a second and look at what else he's tweeting about, right? So, right, we got MMR stuff going on. You've got genocides happening. There's major things happening all over the place. And he doesn't have to talk about only what I want to talk about, but just look over the last day. Something about Grok, something about math, patting himself on the back for things that aren't actually true or accurate, something about a space station. You get the point, guys. Keep going down. Oh, look, they're going back to this point. Zeldin reveals real oversight of shocking $20 billion admin funneled through Citibank. Oh, you mean that claim that you guys all pretended were actual gold bars from the Titanic? Alex Jones swore that it was actually true. Oh, nope, turns out it was just an analogy because he effing said so on his own video. But who cares, though? We already shoved it into the Fort Knox conversation, which I'll make a point about in a second. But, it's infuriating how silly all this is, and people are just following along. But Pam Bondi's the same point. Somebody who is even more immersed in the current talking points around the Epstein list. Here's what she put out on the 3rd. Looking forward to hearing POTUS's new speech tomorrow. Great. Super informed. Thanks, guys. The kind of report on something that's about to happen. A speech is coming tomorrow. Well, cool. Let's look at what she's actually talking about, because it must be more important than that, right? Seeing as how she's currently the Attorney General. Let's see. Well, no. What she's posted since then, let's see. 4 minutes ago. Under President Trump's leadership, we are working around the clock to make America safe again. Okay. Oh, immigration, sanctuary cities. Okay. I'd like to extend and these are all before I even started, by the way, so I didn't know these weren't there a second ago. I'd like to extend my condolences to the good people of Boston. As a result of mayor's decision to side with public safety threats over law-abiding citizens, they'll have no choice but to increase efforts in the city of Boston. Okay, so illegal aliens. And we all know where that leads back to in the conversation. And that's a conflated conversation with the anti-Semitism point, which we'll get to in a minute. But okay, the DOJ will never apologize for taking down dangerous criminals and off the street. That's all we got. No response. What's up with the Epstein files? I mean, you're not even posting about this stuff? How are we not concerned about that? Oh, but don't worry. Breaking news, Jack Posobiec says. Guess what breaking news it is? What happens if there's no gold at Fort Knox? Breaking, a hypothetical question. It's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Breaking news is that I'm posing a hypothetical question that we haven't got the answer to. Breaking! It's about disjointed, just deviation. Look over there. That's how it feels to me. It feels schizophrenic. But the point is, talk about that. Talk about that. Here, Trump says Canada doesn't allow banks to do business in Canada, but their banks flood Americans' market. And Elon goes, that's a valid point. These rules are asymmetric. The tariff conversation has led to this weird, I think more about really creating an illusion. I mean, it's happening clearly, and it's going to increase your costs. But what this really shows me is about trying to create either the justification to go after what they claim they wanted with Canada, or really just to create another schism in the conversation. But here's the best part. Numerous U.S. banks, including Bank of America, Citibank, Capital One, and JP Morgan, all operate in Canada. Oh, cool. So it's a lie. Or you didn't even look. I mean, are we kidding? I mean, what the... mean, it's just insane what is going on right now, but valid point. Okay. Well, the bottom line is, guys, that's not true. Now, clearly, he's right. It's not an equal back and forth, but it doesn't change the fact that that's not accurate. So this game that gets played where it's like, well, that is kind of, well, all you're doing mental gymnastics to try to explain away something that wasn't true. Not what honest people do. And here, as the grand example of that, major errors, investigative report rips apart Elon Musk's spin on DOGE. Now, understand, for those that haven't seen this already, we have gone through this tooth and nail. We've gone through in the last 5 or 6 shows and gone through very, very clear, provable spending directly from usaspending.com or their own screenshots and pages on the DOGE website. And we have shown you stuff that were still happening that they claim were not, contracts they claimed that were canceled and they used them to claim we saved money that were still active, and I followed up and they still were active, or the case that they've gotten mistakes. We showed you those as well in regard to what they claimed the cost was, and it wasn't the same amount, or they added an extra zero. So just to be clear, this is not a partisan point. We can prove this because I personally have done it more than once on this show. So here is what Raw Story writes. Tech billionaire Elon Musk Department of DOGE Department Task Force quietly tried to delete its so-called wall of receipts after reporters identified major mistakes and falsehoods in their claimed monetary savings to the government from canceling various federal contracts. But in doing so, they actually added new errors in the process, according to a new video report published by New York Times, which, no, you should not blindly trust the New York Times. You should look at the source material, like you don't get in a lot of the partisan conversation, and come to your conclusions about it. The reality is this is happening. And it says Elon Musk DOGE cost-cutting efforts. And look, I'm not, by the way, before I read that, New York Times and the rest of these platforms are very clearly partisan and very clearly aggressively going after them like they do with the other way in reverse. That's what this game is. That does not change the fact that the facts are what they are. And it says Elon Musk DOGE cost-cutting effort has published what it calls the wall of receipts, basically a long list of government contracts. And then at one point, I'll add to that, by the way, some of them they're posting these, but it doesn't even seem like there's action taking place. So you're just referencing a contract that's going to be removed. I mean, there's just there's no fluidity to this. There's no process, it seems, and everything's opaque. So we don't even, let's just say in a month from now, he goes and deletes all those. And they go, see, they were just getting ready to delete. Well, then tell us that. Then give somebody some kind of recognizable process but they don't want that under the guise they're keeping secret from the bad Democrats. But really, I think there's a much bigger picture taking place. I think we're being sold out to something else. I think we're handing over power to something else. That's my opinion. And it's saying, and then the savings it's achieved, well, it says his cost-cutting efforts had published what he called the wall of receipts, basically a long list of the contracts, and then the savings it has achieved by canceling each of those. And it says, when DOGE first posted its list, we found problems with all 5 of the 5 largest contracts. The biggest being, the one of 2 that we've talked about, is a supposed $8 billion savings from Homeland Security contract on behalf of Immigration and Customs Enforcement that was actually only $8 million. And we talked about that on the show. Showed the contract, it was very clearly wrong. And it says, and the next 3 being a triple count on a single contract on foreign aid, most of which had already been spent. So there is no savings, even if you cancel it. So these are manipulations that I know they're doing, especially since it's repeated and they don't point them out. And on top of that, he comes out and says about the Gaza condoms one, which again was a provably deliberate lie, that, we're going to be wrong sometimes. Well, yeah, everybody will be wrong sometimes. Even if that's all there is, not correcting those or admitting to those until you're called out in the Oval Office is also dishonest. But that's not what's happening. They are deliberately they're hiding things from you. And it's not my opinion. I've shown you this on the show. These are only adding to it. And it says the problem, he continued, is that even as DOGE scrambled to correct its errors and eliminate those 5 erroneous claim savings, it continued to introduce new ones. Quote, the new largest savings was a $1.9 billion saving. But when we looked into it, we realized the contracts that they were talking about had actually been canceled last year under Biden. And then when you look further down the list, you see that DOGE is claiming credit for contracts that expired even before Joe Biden was president. In one case, the Department of Homeland Security is claiming it saved tens of millions of dollars by canceling a contract that actually ended in 2005 when George W. Bush was president. Now, there are links in here, and we've gone over all this on the show. My point would be, though, right now, I guarantee there are people that are pushing back on this before they can even look to find out, or never even will. That's how partisanship works. It's team sport politics. You've decided to defend it. You can look these things up for yourself. And if you don't know how to look them up, then recognize that you've already been taking their word without checking. But we've shown you on the show twice how to look these things up yourself. Now it says, much of what DOGE is doing is secret. It's in all these different agencies making decisions, gathering data, and we can, while using that to train their mass to control you in the future. And we can see so little of it. And if they are this wrong about the work that we can see, or lying, I add, if they showed this much sloppiness, this much misunderstanding of the machinery of government, what does that mean about the work we can't see in all of these other agencies with all this other data that's being done in secret? My God, what a valid point. Read and write access on a $6 trillion system database, and we don't get to see what's happening. They are not using the privacy. What is the Privacy Act? I forget what the act was, where they're supposed to be leaving what they do. Now that was put to Bondi about the Epstein files, and she goes, "Yeah, they better be." Oh, but it doesn't matter for them though. Whether we're talking about Elon Musk or Amy Gleason, who's apparently the actual administrator. I don't care if Elon Musk is doing it. If he is, he's acting on her behalf because that's how it's supposed to work. Technically, it's not, since an advisor is not supposed to be doing anything but advising them on what action they take. Either way, we know it's all a game and it's a lie because Elon Musk is very clearly in control. My point, though, is it very clearly there's so much going on that one of them are accountable for that we don't get to see. And if they're not following those laws and making other people have to, then they are a dictator or an authoritarian leadership, or rather authoritarian controller. Now here is what DC Drano says. One of many examples we could have pulled up, but it says, and this clip I'll play for you. Bongino, part of the government, says DOGE has discovered a foreign fraud ring that was used by fake social security numbers to... Sure, I would not balk at that for a second. And if you think that's somehow unique to only Biden's last administration, I can't believe how stupid you are. I shouldn't say it like that, but my God, this stuff clearly is not just a 4-year dynamic. This has been going on forever. But that's not the point now, because it should matter. Even if the people who did it are suddenly calling it out, good. I'm still glad we're having it called out. But is it changing, and are they actually calling something out? Or is this just a floated statement that nobody's actually checked, that they're all repeating? That's what keeps happening. Now, I'm not even saying, like before, that I know for sure it's not true. What I'm saying is you don't either, and neither do they. Or at the very least, they're not showing you anything that gives you any information other than them saying that it's the case. So anybody out there reporting it, like DC Drano, unless he has some access to something he's not showing you, don't know for sure. And how many times have we already seen it? What about that early claim where they said they approved every single contract, no matter what, to even the terrorist groups? Nobody's ever given us any information on that, any provable evidence, or the last claim they made for before that, which I can't remember. It was another bombastic billions of dollars that they never actually showed us, while being caught everywhere, it seems, lying about a lot of stuff. Shouldn't that raise a red flag? But here's what he says. DOGE may have uncovered, at least he said that, $1 trillion in Social Security fraud, ? Okay. Over 73% of Americans approve of what DOGE is doing. No, they don't, guys. This is the same partisan nonsense. Every single time, whether left or right, whoever the current partisan manipulator is, they give you their polls. Remember, they gave us polls that say Clinton was going to win? They take polls, they very clearly selectively apply them to where they know it's mostly Republicans, and voila, everybody supports it. Look, I think we can easily see that most people, even Republicans, are a little bit uncertain about what's happening right now. So that is, to me, BS. Anything's possible. But my point on top of that is, how do you know these things? They're sick of paying taxes to these thieves. You mean the government? Yeah, we all are, bud, but it's not only one side of it. All the government takes your taxes. And it says, this is why we need the DOGE Act, to make these fraud protections permanent. So here we go. Now they're going to pass something that gets this forever. Talk about a cemented deep state. We just read the article from Strategic. Doing functionally is a deep state. They are rolling this into a new situation. They're just bringing deep state public. Essentially what it is. Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which did the opposite. Now let's pass the DOGE Act. My God. Blind. Look, it seems like they're just part of this, guys. I'll include this. That's the wrong one. I'll just look it up on the site. I called it the deep DOGE state. And it's a great article, by the way. I use the image from the Strategic Culture Foundation. Yeah. And it's important. Make sure you read the article and then watch the show. It's what it is, guys. Now, that doesn't mean good or bad. For all we know, it's a good deep state saving us from the bad deep state. Anything possible. But that's not what we're asking for. We don't want a new centralized control structure that will eventually wane right back into the same thing, as it always does. That's why we're trying to highlight these problems. But here's what Bongino said.
He discovered a foreign fraud ring in our entitlement programs. Folks,
And first of all, do you wonder who the foreign entity is that's profiting from this manipulation? I'm sure you could probably do the math and recognize who very clearly seems to be the focus of all of these things, left or right, which always tells you something.
Even if you are not against government waste, and you love government waste, I should say, not to use a negative there to describe it. If you're for government waste, at least waste it here, right? If you're going to waste government money and piss it away in a toilet bowl, at least waste it on U.S. citizens. Nope. They found nobody cares on the left. Watch this.
As we know, there's a massive amount of fraud in this country. You have, for example, foreign fraud rings. These are foreign nationals who come into the United States. They use fake Social Security numbers. They use fake identities to steal billions in taxpayer benefits. There's no way to know until DOGE gains full access exactly how much money we're talking about. But over a 10-year normal budget window, you could be talking about saving over $1 trillion.
Oh, yeah. Now it all makes sense. It's a complete hypothetical broad point about a lot of different things jammed together that we can't prove. And they blindly report this. How embarrassing. But this is how it's being reported. DOGE has discovered, Bongino says. Or rather, DOGE News says about itself, even though we can't verify any of that. And it says a foreign fraud ring. What ring are we talking about? Is it a coordinated effort or somebody doing it as an organized effort? That's what that would mean. The way he just described it made it sound like some broad overlapping thing of individuals doing this thing and taking advantage. That's what he said. This is the mainstream alternative media for you. It is nothing but constant deviation, grifting, alteration of facts, or just flat out lying for their benefit. It's everywhere you look. On that note, let's talk about the many different things that we're clearly seeing as major deviations from what we were told would be the path of MAGA and Maha and whatever else you want to call this stuff. Now, before we get into it, make sure you recognize we talked about on the 16th of February how the Trump administration had approved poultry jabs, or rather, jab for avian flu for poultry. Not mRNA, at least not provably at the moment, but did do so, a conditional approval. And when we covered this, we got a hell of a lot of pushback claiming it was Biden or it wasn't true without any investigation. And then the next day we followed up and showed you that they definitely did and went even further and said, we're our new biosecurity and medication direction. And then it got real quiet. Funny how those people that acted like it wasn't true suddenly didn't stand up and go, oh, you were right. Or, man, let's fight this together. No. They ran away and found another way to argue why we were wrong. Bottom line is this is not what we said or we were told would happen. Not what RFK. I mean, if you asked him what he would do about this stuff before this or before Trump, you know damn well what he's been saying for years. Here we are. Now, he is the person most capable of stopping this. He's the HHS. That's over all the other health dynamics other than Trump. But I even argue that would be even a different idea. Like, I don't think Trump could supersede him when it comes to certain things other than doing what they do with everything, executive order and just pretending like that matters. But the truth, I mean, other than basically, I'm not sure. Is that a position? I believe he can just fire him, I think. But either way, he is in a position to be able to change this stuff because he wants to. And he's been telling us he wants to. And here we are, and now it's not happening. Now, maybe it'll happen tomorrow. But a lot of that day one talk was what everybody remembers right now. Let's also not forget that over 700 million now that's gone to Moderna for an mRNA bird flu shot. 4 people. That was signed on January 17th, 3 days before Trump took power. Since he's taken power, the money has gone to them. That's very easy to understand. I don't even know why that should be surprising. He's rolling out an mRNA cancer platform dynamic that's going to be, it's funny how these words get stuck in my head. A mRNA platform direction that is not going to stop at cancer. They've already told you that. So this should not be shocking. But how? Obviously, this is not what we were promised. Now, as Jason Bassler points out, on March 3rd, no Epstein files, $16 billion to Israel in 1 month, 3 airstrikes in Somalia in 2 weeks, RFK Jr. pushing MMR vaccines for measles, which we'll get to. I wouldn't say pushing, but we'll get to why this is a huge hypocritical stance. New regime, same playbook, different marketing, same grift. And what's funny to me is this guy goes, well, that post aged horribly. What, the next day? No, it didn't. Every single one of those things are very clearly still going on, but it's just funny because the post has like 1 million views. So this is funny. These people are seemingly desperate to hide what's going on. And I can't speak to what their intentions are, but this general feeling we have where clearly the effort, as we'll get into with the Fox News article, is to downplay, gaslight, and hide. But starting with what he tweeted on the 2nd of March, he says the measles outbreak in Texas is a call to action for all of us to reaffirm our commitment to public health. Okay. The very first thing to think about, which we're going to get to second, is whether or not you think he would ever have told you that this is a problem. I've seen his conversations of the past about how we can see, PCR false positive pandemic illusions, or even just illness illusions. How we can see, or the general risk of measles in and of itself. The idea that you could look at the long-term numbers and the reality of, funny enough, Steve this morning was just playing a clip from the Brady Bunch. You probably all seen it, where at that time there was a joke. Hey, he's coming home from school with school and a smile. And they're like, what? It's like, well, because he gets no school. And the point is they're all laughing and they've got little dots in their face. And they're like, oh, now we have all got natural immunity. Hooray. And it's like a positive story. To let it spread around the family, because that, with the logic of natural immunity, was actually something that was there, whether you believe it's true or it is true or not. Today, for you to jump at this now is exactly what I feel he would have criticized before we got here. But of course, I could be wrong. By working together, parents, healthcare providers, community leaders, and government officials, we can prevent future outbreaks and protect the health of our nation. It's funny. I feel like playing this right now. It's really quick, but one of the things I'm going to point out about him right there saying this, but in general, the clip he says about how we need to get back to trusting the CDC and the government, that is diametrically opposed to what he has said before he was in power, which is that you shouldn't trust the government. In fact, what he said more clearly that his father told him is that people in authority lie.
My father told me when I was a child, people in authority lie. And if we are going to continue to live in a democracy, we need to understand that people in authority lie.
Pretty clear. Now, that doesn't mean everybody, but they do. And he knew that. And so it's interesting, this this push to go, well, now that we're there, now you can trust us, though. But that's not what an honest person would do. The idea is not that we should trust the right people. It's that authority, government, institutions should be intrinsically, inherently questioned. We should be skeptical. We should push back. Never take it at face value, even if they're doing what they believe is right. They could be misled. They could be missing something. But it goes on to say, under my leadership, HHS is and will always be committed to radical transparency and regain the public's trust in its health agencies. Right there. The whole point is never should you trust a government. Never should you trust a representative of the government. Never should you trust a government agency. That's not to say you hate and despise them. That's up to you. You just do not blindly trust. And you can remove blindly. It's the same word. Trust. You should question. Trust means you go, I accept what you say. You could trust and investigate. That's a little better. But still starting by accepting the statement, and then you should go, I'm going to look into that first before I decide whether or not I trust or go along. That's always what you should do. And if you don't have time for that, then don't engage in the conversation. Or you can do what you want. My point is to be responsible about it. That's how you engage with this. And to have people like that now leaning you back into trusting the same system. Well, what happens when the Democrats take back over? Even though it's all the same. It's just a logical point. So here's what he said. Going back, or rather just a general point about this for those that have not seen this or only woke up in 2000, whatever. So basic point is going back to the Vax documentary before. He has been adamantly fighting the MMR vaccine. And it says he often, RFK Jr. has been a prominent figure in the and to be clear, this is, of course, the general framing. He is not anti-vaccine as much as he did in some ways lean into that a bit on certain podcasts. But I've said this roundly. He has always made it clear that he is not anti-vaccine. He simply wants good science, which that's the same point that I'll take. And I've said at the same time, if what we believe about that fat field of actionology and the science behind it is even true, which is a big if, Well, then I would argue that basically there's positive outcomes that you could find through that if it was only allowed, people could made their own choices and it was not some forceful line. But again, maybe I'm wrong with that because we've been lied to about everything our entire lives. But the point being, he's been very clear about that. And he said it over and over and over, and it becomes and that's how the left-right paradigm works. The right makes it their narrative that he's fighting all of it and he's going to start bringing it all down. The left is that he hates them all and he's a big anti-vax monster, and neither of them are actually the truth. It's pretty simple. But particularly against the MMR vaccine, not to be confused with mRNA. He has made claims that the MMR vaccine is linked to autism and contains harmful ingredients. Okay, that even just that alone, why would you then go, yeah, you could take it if you want? Why wouldn't your job as the person heading the health of this country be like, this is a dangerous thing, so we'll take this off the market and we'll fill it in with the things we know we can take in the time while we work on something else, even though I wouldn't want that. The point is that some of them want it, right? And it's about choice, right? So if they want to take something for this, which is an injection, then he should work on making something that isn't going to hurt them. And if you know it's hurtful or harmful, it's not freedom to give them something, allow them to take something. There's two ways to look at this. If this was something on the street or they could buy in a store, yeah, it's their choice. No matter how dangerous it is, there's a lot of really dangerous things out there. And when it's something that is being advocated by the government, or at least being proposed by the government through official channels, that's their responsibility. That's why they've removed the liability from all these things. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't matter anymore. But you see the difference? So they're conflating liberty and freedom by going, they should have a choice, which I agree with. But if he knows it's bad, it's the same as Donald Trump pretending like he didn't force that shot. Well, it's killing children. So you're okay with that? Or even he never acknowledges that, where the whole game is that he keeps pretending like it's safe, even though maybe he thinks that, even though you all know it's not. But those are both illogical, irresponsible, and I think dishonest stances. If he was being honest about his what he's been doing this whole time, that would be the first thing he pulls away. But these are all my opinions. I'm sure people disagree. But see, my problem is not disagreeing just because you if you disagree with the statement that you feel it's not hypocrisy, because you feel what he said here meets what he's been saying before. That's a fair discussion. But the argument is not about that. I'm saying that it's hypocrisy. The argument is somehow you're pretending he's anti-vax, or you didn't even read it, or things like that, which we'll get into. And that's where the dishonesty comes from. Particularly against the MMR vaccine has been his main focal point. Now let's actually read the article for the fourth time now. What's funny is don't ever assume. I miss things. I make mistakes. But know this from me. I will never talk about something that I have not looked through for the very purpose of knowing that that's silly. Why would I pretend to know and I haven't looked at it? And that's just who I am. It's also very easily to set yourself up to be made to look stupid, which apparently none of the partisan people care about because they do it every day. The point, though, is you can trust that I will look through these things. It doesn't mean I always am right or I make mistakes like anybody. But of course I read this, guys. Of course I read it because I shared it. But RFK Jr., measles outbreak is call to action for all of us. Now, let me show you the good and the bad here. There's 2 points to make as well, right? Before we even get into it. Yes, he wrote it, RFK Jr., and yes, it's possible that there were things done in the article that were because of the editorial team. But let's be clear about something. Nowhere in this does it suggest or even indicate or even suggest that there was some kind of change by the editorial team. Doesn't mean it's not there, not the case. The argument immediately is like, do you know that half the time they don't even write that part because that's the part that everyone saw? Yeah, okay. Are you telling me you know he didn't? Oh, crickets. Okay, got it. So you're just using a hypothetical to shout down what we can see in front of us? Well, that's dishonest. That's like saying, well, they must have an explanation that makes it make sense. Do they? Do you know? Well, then in that case, let's keep addressing what's in front of us. So it says, MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potentially deadly disease. Now, it also says basically the same thing in the article that he wrote. So I don't think we're not really splitting hairs here, guys. Again, don't forget my stance is because of his work on that shot in particular, or just the general dishonesty of whether this actual measles outbreak, the PCR manipulation, or just the idea of specifically any shots that we are coming from the same system and the same scientific background of the NIH, the same people, it's the same stuff. Shouldn't it at least be concerning that maybe there's the same problem? I mean, weren't they also telling us that we're concerned about ingredients that we didn't know were in those shots? The COVID-19. So if that's the case, then why wouldn't we immediately wonder if all of them might be compromised? I'm not saying we know that. But you get the logic there. So for this to happen right away, my point is anything other than yanking this off the shelf, The moment he steps in, pull that back. The very first thing, if you want to keep them, is split them into 3 shots. Like normal things should be, where you're not jamming 3 things together that have never been tested alongside each other. That's very real, easy to look up. How do you possibly tell me you should take 3 different things that have never been tested alongside each other in a young infant's arm, and we're going to pretend like that makes sense? He has made that argument. Okay. So now he is suggesting this is an option you can take. And clearly stressing, not because of this subtitle, but in the article, that it is important for you to take. How is that not hypocrisy? Now, also, the other point we make was that, is it possible he's being forced? Of course it is. Is it possible that this is hurtful to the Trump administration, so he decided not to do it? Yeah, of course it is. All those are objective things to point out. It doesn't change the fact that it's still hypocrisy. Now, you could argue that he's being threatened, for example, and you could then, maybe he's, let's make it extreme. And I'm not saying I have any indication of this. If there was some kind of massive threat on his life or something like that, well, then that might make it make sense. It would still be a major deviation from what happened, and you should still call it out because we don't know what's going on. But the point about Trump and, I've seen that floated around, like that maybe he's just, it's going to hurt what Trump is trying to accomplish. And maybe it's another 3 days, a week from now that it will end up happening. But right now it wasn't necessary. Oh, that's certainly possible. But do you know any of that? No. So let's not guess into the wind when we have stuff in front of us. And again, even if it was that case, if you were RFK Jr. and if you, based on the way he's being presented, especially from specifically the Make America Healthy Again contingent of the Trump administration, the people that support him, you support him because of this man and his work at CHD and the work he's been doing over the years, which is still, in my opinion, amazing, important work. Wouldn't you expect him, based on that idea of who he is, to stand up right now and say, I'm being forced to do this. I don't believe in this. This thing is not something you should take based on my work, but it's not my choice. And then stay in the position, but wouldn't you expect that? Well, no. Okay, if you don't think it's appropriate, well, that means you're choosing politics over your health. To me, that's not what we were told this person was. Let's read the article. Some of it. Read through the whole thing, please. Now, it says, as the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that's HHS, that's RFK Jr., I am deeply concerned, he says, about the recent measles outbreak. Now, to me, right there, you've seen him in the past push back on the hyping around cases and discussion. This feels like the same thing to me. From an objective standpoint, nonpartisan, ask yourself that. Do we believe that the cases will show you down below, which is only like 170 something cases, or is that let me make sure I'm not getting that wrong. I'll get to it. I'll make sure it's accurate. Not that many in the larger scheme. That this would be the action, that you would hype this and talk about it and then also use a shot or suggest even that you didn't really support at all. That seems pretty crazy to me. And it's right there. I'm sorry. It's right beneath it. 146 confirmed cases. That's it. Since late January 2025. Now, yeah, we shouldn't ignore that. Or rather, at least the point is always is information and choice, which is ultimately what's happening. I'm not suggesting that, people are not right now being forced to take shots, at least not in normal context. The ones that have always been there are still there, like forcing children to get shots to go to school. That all still happens. And right there, by the way, on a slight side note, I'm seeing a lot of people in that Maha movement who are like, what's going on? Didn't we all say this was going to be the first thing to yank this schedule, at least break it down and make sure we look into it? No, we're focused on helping Israel right now. So wait, another 8 years maybe. I don't think it was ever in plans. But 146 cases confirmed. PCR test, by the way. Actually, I'll just show you that right now. The current test for measles often involves real-time reverse transcript PCR test, which is widely used to confirm the presence of measles virus. That's not unique, guys. I just want to make sure you see it. That's basically what they do today. So, isn't he the one that told us the PCR test is an illusory dynamic? Okay, well, then why wouldn't you question those cases? They're using PCR tests. Did RFK do it? No. This is in Texas. Shouldn't there be some level of, it's PCR, so let's make sure we're not jumping to conclusions? Nope. It's an immediate call to action, an immediate hype of the worry of the thing that could be not there at all. Look, I really believe that anybody who is truly honest about this is also recognizing these are deviations. Now, let's see. This is there it is. I'll include this. I've gone over this probably 50 times in the past, a lot during COVID-19. It's just the article that we've covered many times from the New York Times going back a long while. This was 2007. Faith in quick tests leads to epidemic that wasn't. This is the PCR test, one of the earlier examples, and they literally had a massive, they shut down areas and schools and hospitals, and they had a whole quarantine, and it turned out to be all false. There was no whooping cough pandemic. And it was all because of the PCR test. I've covered this many times. They know all this, guys, and so does RFK Jr. So going forward, he says, and this is the caption. Actually, I think it's right down here too. I hate when they do that in an article where they give you a caption, like a quote in the top, but it's in the paragraph down below. I don't know why I don't like that, but vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, he says, but also contribute to community immunity. Protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. Is that not the groupthink mindset that we all push back on? Do it for your grandma? Come on, guys. This is not difficult to see if we're being honest with ourselves. Now, it says measles is a highly contagious respiratory illness. I mean, I frankly disagree with that very framing. But it says, with certain health risks, especially to unvaccinated individuals. Really? I mean, again, the idea is that there are many more risks based on the research that come along with these injections than something that largely does not actually kill people. That in history was something that was basically allowed to spread, so we got natural immunity, and then it was a non-issue, like chickenpox and so on. Zoe this morning was telling us that she still has antibodies for chickenpox. She got tested for with a titer. That's how these things work, at least as we understand it in the past. What's going on there? I feel like that's crazy. And it says the DSHS reports that 79 of the confirmed cases with PCR test involved individuals who had not received the MMR, while 62 had unknown status and at least 5 had received an injection. So basically the way to read that is almost half of them, or rather about a little more than half, had the injection. Seems like a coin flip to me. Now, they do this like they did last time, and we caught them in COVID-19, where they claimed the 62 cases had unknown status, and you looked into it, and it was not unknown. There was a clear way to hide what was happening. I'm not saying it's happening here. I don't know. But what you know is what they're claiming is confirmed is 79 with it, or without it, excuse me. And then the rest of them, unknown. So it's very well certainly possible that the rest of them had it, and they still got it. Which, by the way, if we look back through like the polio dynamic situation, it's constant how we see the overlap to their own campaigns and how it plays out with the actual illness. Now, there's discussions going around about a measles campaign that took place in Texas right before this. I wasn't able to verify that. If you guys have insight on that, let me know, because that would be very relevant, especially while I'm live right now. So let me know if you get that in the chat. But going on, it says, in response to this outbreak, I have directed, this is RFK Jr. speaking, the CDC and the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response to work closely with the Texas health authorities to provide comprehensive support. HHS's efforts include offering technical assistance, laboratory support, vaccines, and therapeutic medications as needed. This includes ensuring that accurate information about vaccine safety and efficacy is disseminated. Now, that's great if that's what happens. See, that's also the problem, is that people tend to read that and go, see, it's going to be different. Maybe. They said those things too before and then gave you a blank insert for the injection that went through both administrations. Are we forgetting that? Right? This is not new. This is a bipartisan thing. But if we actually get more in-depth information about this in real time before you're forced, then that would be great. And of course, accurate. Just by giving you information that you believe you take at face value because they said it is not the same thing. But it goes, and make vaccines readily accessible for all who want them. No, that's good. Not in the sense that I think they should be doing that, but the idea is choice. Now, from a government perspective, if you knew one of those were deadly, you wouldn't just go, well, freedom. You would say, well, we know that's deadly, so we're going to pull that one away. Here are all the other options you can take, all of which are way better for you, by the way, and we'll work on one that will do, aren't you telling us you've got this platform that can dump it out in a week? Now, I'm clearly joking. It's not what we want. But I'm just simply showing you that it feels constructed. It doesn't line up with the facts. But it says, it's also our responsibility to provide up-to-date guidance on available therapeutic medications. Now, what this is being framed as, and it goes administration of vitamin A, is somewhat unprecedented. It's not really. I'll show you the vitamin A point that goes back well before this administration, but also the idea that providing guidance on therapeutics, let's be clear, that was a major shift during COVID-19. And bipartisan, by the way. So if you go back before that, I mean, there was, even Fauci, for crying out loud, before COVID-19 was talking about vitamin D and vitamin C. So that was a shift, and it was a global shift and bipartisan in the United States for COVID-19. So now to do something different it's being framed in a lot of ways as only unique to this administration or partisan, and I don't think it is. On top of that, the vitamin A point I think is dishonest. I'll show you what I mean. But continuing the article, parents play a pivotal role in safeguarding their children's health. You're right, damn right they do. All parents should consult with their healthcare providers to understand their options to get the MMR vaccine. Now, it's a weird way to write that. Now, I don't read too much into it, but it says, again, all parents should consult with their healthcare providers to understand their options to get the MMR vaccine. Not options, period. Right? Like, it just feels like a weird way to say that, but he does provide the other points in there. Again, just the fact that that's being written by him, it grosses me out. I'm trying to be objective about this, but if you've been following this, I mean, I remember going to see the Vax documentary at one of the premieres and like literally going like, it was very important. And that was Andrew Wakefield and Del Bigtree and RFK Jr. I mean, this was a huge thing, Brian Hook, but seems like that's not important now. And it says the decision to vaccinate is a personal one. Vaccines, this is what it said in that part up there. People are framing this like somehow inserted by the Fox News editorial team. This is a direct statement from RFK Jr. It says, the decision to vaccinate is a personal one. Vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. Now, if you're a mom on the fence and you're not partisan, you're going to look at that and go, okay, it seems like he's suggesting that that is what I should be doing based on that statement, that like to get your options to get that. And the decision to do so not only protects your children from measles, but everybody in the community and those we can't even help. But then it goes on to give you other options. I'll read, but that clearly, if you're a mom and you're not choosing a side, you'd be like, well, okay, it's pretty clear that seems like what he's suggesting. And it says, good nutrition remains a best defense against most chronic and infectious illnesses. Doesn't say measles. So, I mean, I would agree either way. But if it was to come right around and say the best defense is this against measles, that I would be like, well, good. Didn't say that. Vitamins A, C, D, and foods rich in vitamins B12, C, and E should be part of a balanced diet. Like that's absolutely. I'm very happy you're saying that. That should be basic general knowledge. Okay. So the way this is being played is people are trying to say, but look, he said these are the things. So you're just pretending that or really the big argument is almost as if did you even read it? Because that's not what he didn't actually say that. He did though. So it's what's funny to me is I'm not going to assume in reverse, but it seems as if a lot of the people that are acting like we didn't read it actually didn't read it. And the talking point was swinging around and they just didn't like what I was saying about it. And so the reflexive point was what everybody else was saying. You know, that's how it works, especially on Twitter today. Close that. PCR test. Okay. Now, as Just a Thought points out, it's kind of funny. Maha went from RFK is going to take down the vaccine industry to, yeah, he's pushing vaccines, but at least he's saying it should be the parent's choice in literally a week and a half. It's basically what happens. Now, and I'm not even trying to say good or bad. You know, I have an opinion, but that's just an objective observation of what happened. And that was a large talking point. And now it's basically not just watered down. It's gone. And again, to be clear, like I said before, I think maybe the majority, I can't really tell just yet, but a lot of people that support this administration are not okay with this, and they're speaking it out. Now, this was the post I got to, and I guess I'll read that first. So this is this is the first, you know me on this, the way I do this. This is the first place I saw it, so that's what I share. Not because I support Aaron Blake or even know his work or, whatever else. It looks like, yes, he looks like he's a Washington Post. I mean, I didn't even know that. It's not even about who they are. It's about the content. And by the way, when it comes to articles, as somebody pointed out, it was like CNN. They said, why don't you use an archive? Don't give them support. I said, that's a good point. I'll do that. And I do try to now. If some of them don't show up. My point is I saw this and whoa, okay, that's crazy. Looked up the article, read the article, which is why I included the link there for you, and then posted this. Now, he says, RFK Jr., get the MMR vaccine. Now, look, I don't agree with it that there's a lot more to it. But if you actually can read that and argue he didn't basically say that, basically insinuate that this is what helps the community, this is what that's what he did, guys. And that is a huge deviation. But even if he didn't do that, I'm still calling hypocrisy because he's not pulling it off the market. That's my line in the sand right there. But I said, guys, this has to be the final straw. With everything else we've seen, me going back to the Israel point, how can Maha or MAGA defend this? That's a genuine in response after reading that article. Now, I'm not going to get into it all, but the amount of nonsense down here is outrageous. And it's the same thing. Every single one of them, like every single one of them. Did you read it? You didn't even read the article. You didn't even read it. You didn't even read it, like, over and over and over. See, read the article. He doesn't say get the vaccine, even though that's not true. It's crazy. You do this long enough, it's kind of insane how you could almost map it out. But I said, now they've got their talking point. This was after this came out. And it was weird is there was like a silence where it's like, oh, everyone saw it, was like, no way. That can't be true. Looking it up and going through. And then after like an hour, it was like a waterfall. Because some large commenter out there made the argument, and I'll show you the one I think it likely was. But I said, now they've got their talking point. Apparently, we all never read it. Incorrect. And he gave other options, which he did. That's like being okay, Trump still supports the killer COVID shot because he, quote, never forced it. Even as that's incorrect, that's idiocy. These are deadly shots. That's self-explanatory to me. What was this one? This one. Oh, it's what I responded. Same thing. So this, was it before that? No, it's the next one. Did I miss one? I think I just missed one I was going to say. That's what we're going to go to next. No, that's it. Okay. So now my point is, the talking point was very clearly put out there. That they're not even reading the article because that can't be the case. Well, you read it already. So this one came out, and this was early in the conversation. It was after Ian Carroll called it out and said, hell no. What the hell is this? Call to action is 1 in 32 children in America today have autism. Now, just regardless of your concerns, which are right, I share them in many cases about what he does. He's right. He says the call to action is 1 in 32 for autism, or plenty of other things, including a genocide that our government's involved in. But the point when it is in the realm of health that he's active, that has been like his primary effort. I shouldn't say that, but it's been a huge part of what he's been doing. And why wouldn't you start there? Well, again, he doesn't have ultimate control over what he does, but clearly none of this is going in the right direction. But it goes, just because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are burning their reputations to the ground doesn't mean you should too. But he goes, everyone is trying to crap on RFK Jr. over this. This is MJ Truth Ultra, who has 500,000 followers. Says, but nobody's actually reading the op-ed. How do you even, do a poll? How do you even know that? Because it's self-serving. It's not even an assumption. That's a self-serving, unknown statement. This is the mainstream alternative media, guys. We are the media now. And what's funny is Ian Carroll is clearly a part of that kind of new field, but he seems to be caught between them. Now, again, my thought before of this was like, I can't tell whether it's somebody who seems to be pulling punches for clear reasons and rose to rapid internet fame out of nowhere because he's doing it on purpose, or because he's just kind of being used, which I think is more common today than we realize. Major people that get artificially blown up and they don't even know why, and they just kind of fall into these traps, they said. Or you don't want to get rid of the funding you've been getting or the research, and you just kind of end up getting guided. And then eventually you just kind of get a sense of the guardrails and just keep going. That's what a lot of people do. Now, interestingly, you've seen him push back in certain ways. He made big calls about Israel. And so I can't tell. I don't know. There's no evidence, so I wouldn't claim I know one way or the other anyway. But what's funny is he's now getting pushback from the right as well as anybody else. That's interesting, to say the least. But this guy's pretending they know that nobody read it, which is just, we should laugh at it. That's worthy of ridicule. How could you possibly know that? But I go, I'm sure somebody didn't. But I go, disappointed Ian Carroll didn't read the article how do you even know that? I mean, look, he claims he did. It's a stupid thing to say. It says he urges people to explore therapeutic options. He did. And didn't urge them, by the way. He simply pointed them out. So you see how the wording, what he did is he urged the MMR shot while also suggesting these things. That's my opinion based on the wording. But I think structurally, based on the way words and definitions, it clearly was the way it went. But to say urged the other is actually not true. But it says, and even had the CDC update their guidelines for vitamin A. Did they? Or is that a circulating talking point because of what RFK stated on his tweet? I'll show you. Now this, again, I can't stress enough how often this happens in the new media, which is just, you read it off his post and you just contorted that into a talking point that then spreads like wildfire and becomes truth, even though no one's even looked into it. At the same time, he says vaccination against measles MMR, which I don't know why we would think we need 3 shots for measles, is a personal choice, a decision you should make. Yep, he did. And I think that's hypocrisy. I'm sorry, and not that he gives you a choice, but that he would be allowed, he would say, this is something you can choose to take versus other things. If he's being honest about what he's been doing, he would say, I recommend you don't take that, but it's your choice. That's that. I would be like, well, even then, why wouldn't you pull it off the market? But at least he's telling you his honest opinion. He's not doing that. So I'm sorry, but I agree with how he's handling I agree with how he's handling the whole measles outbreak. Really? So make notes of these things. The people that have leaned into the whole COVID-19, now it's just go along to get along. FYI, surprise, surprise, the MMR subtitle in the headline was written by Fox News. How do you know that? You know why he says that? Now, look, it's certainly possible. I can't prove that. My gut tells me he's saying that because that's the talking point. I'd love for him to prove where that came from. Now, let's be clear about something. MMR vaccine crucial to avoiding potentially deadly disease is basically exactly paraphrasing what he said in the article. So I think they didn't read these things. I think they are going along with the reflexive reaction to this, and I can't know for sure, because if you look at what they're saying and you actually read the article, it sounds like they didn't actually know what it's talking about. But that's kind of the way they're doing it in reverse. The reality, though, is I think it's very dishonest either way. But look at what he highlights, and we already went over it, that you leave out all the important parts about the injection itself. I wonder why. Everyone's trying to... Okay, so here's the tweet where he puts out after this, or I think it's right before even, and it says, my heart goes out to the families impacted by the current measles outbreak in Texas. I recognize the serious impact of this outbreak on families, children, and healthcare workers. Here's what we've done. Here at HHS, we have supported Texas Department of Health through technical assistance and vaccines. 2,000 MMR doses through, so they sent 2,000 shots of something that he has been working for decades to tell you are deadly, are causing autism, have dangerous ingredients. I just love for someone to logically make sense of that. Freedom does not cut it in the context of a government who have produced these, who profit from them, who are now telling you I'll go through it 100 times more. But here's the point for what he's saying. Updated the CDC website with guidance on measles management to include physician-administered outpatient vitamin E. Okay, vitamin A, excuse me. I just can't, it just makes me laugh how silly and easy this is to see. So what he's saying, and he even had the CDC update their guidelines for administering vitamin A, which is huge and never been done before. Patently false. What he actually says, by the way, updated the CDC guidance on measles management to include physician-administered outpatient vitamin A. You want to know what that means? Here's the actual page. Okay, so first, that's the one they put out February 27th under the current administration. And here's the page, support care including vitamin A, and that gives you the link. That's where we're going to, just so you can see it. That's the link right there. There it is. Here's the page I've highlighted. Okay. So this is July 15th, 2024. Now, in and of itself, that might prove right there that this would exist. But I'll pretend like, let's just say for sake of conversation, that this page, or rather this updated part, wasn't updated in July 15th, 2024, which I almost don't think it was. I think that the update is the update, but why wouldn't you change the date if it was? Now, that's not even the point. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that's just an old date and they only updated this drop-down menu. That's possible, I guess, but usually they update the title. Okay, here's what it says. Updated vitamin A recommendation. Under the supervision of a healthcare provider, vitamin A may be administered to infants, children in the United States with measles as part of the management. Should be managed with vitamin A. That's what it says. People who are hospitalized for this should be. Okay, here's what it used to say. Wayback Machine. And this is just, this is from February before they changed that, a few days before they updated it. Here's what it says. Where was it? There it is. Okay, so you can see the difference, right? It doesn't say updated, so it's clearly the older one. Here's what it reads. Severe measles among children, such as those who are hospitalized, should be treated with vitamin A. And then everything else is exactly the same. Exactly. Okay, so what's the difference? Under supervision of a healthcare provider. Under supervision. That's the only difference. So did he even have them update their guidance for administering this that's never happened and huge? Or Did he just read what he wrote right there and misunderstood what he said and turned it into some massive shift because now they're letting you give vitamin A? Never happened. Nope, not true. It's been there for a long time. It said given vitamin A. Now the difference seems to be you can only do it with a doctor. Honestly, seems like it's more restrictive, but that's just logic. Isn't that interesting, guys? Points like that should wrap around the world and show you how dishonest it is, not because of the one guy, but in the context of when it's about like a major, just never break through, because people like us and you in the chat, we're not allowed to be that way. And I think, ultimately, at the end of the day, I see how what we do trickles in and makes change happen, even in the corporate media. That's all we want. But it's just interesting to note that there's a very careful way that they don't that, because you know what that amounts to is us getting more resources, us getting more reach, and then we can build more and get more. And that's what they're trying to avoid. This is just simply dishonest. And these are the people that are getting risen up to millions of followers for the interest of the new media, which is all just the new mainstream media. But here's where it gets even more interesting. As Decensored News points out, let's just even say the entire op-ed wasn't accurate and we all didn't read it. Well, here he is before this in Congress recommending that shot. Says all these partisans rushing to rationalize JFK, just embarrassing. Here he is before this endorsing the measles vaccine.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those vaccines.
Fortunately, there is clear data showing that the HPV vaccine has saved lives and cut cervical cancer rates dramatically. If confirmed as HHS secretary, would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against HPV?
I recommend that children follow the CDC schedule. And I will support the CDC schedule when I get in there, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed.
See, many people didn't even know that. That is a major change of direction. That's not what he's been saying. And I mean, HPV vaccine, are you serious? That's one of the most contentious ones out there, with literature like you've never seen, showing you all sorts of crazy problems that this should be, this should be alone enough to stop the moment, but it's not. A lot of dishonesty out there. So that's before. So before, and now in the midst of this, hyping this new thing and then telling people that's what they should be taking. Here are responses underneath that video. The immediate response from some of the RFK fans on Gab, etc., when originally posted these clips, was to suggest that he was simply telling them what he wanted to hear. How long did we hear that? Oh, he's just saying that to get confirmed. Those same people are now trying to rationalize what he said as necessary. There it says, you had to. Do you really think he believes that? Sometimes you have to play the game. See? We all saw this. It's not shocking to anybody. I think he's telling them what they want to hear, not necessarily what he personally believes everywhere. Consider that. Now, here is RFK Jr. asked about the MMR shot for his kids. Here's what he said.
I would love to talk about that more, but we're low on time and I want to get to vaccines. If your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No. I got measles, mumps when I was a kid. It was
lots of people used to die from those diseases.
Well, you know what? They died in the 1900s or early 1900s. There were about 10,000.
Now it goes on. Watch it for yourself. The point is what we just showed you. But interestingly, going over the, basically downplaying, because it's not down, it's the honest, I would argue, representation of the risk. Now he's hyping up that risk. Why? On top of the fact that he just said that, no, I wouldn't give my kids that. Okay.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine.
Okay. Anybody honest is going to make sure you understand that that's hypocrisy. That's two separate statements about the same thing. You don't support a shot that you wouldn't give to your kids. Now, Derek highlights that on the second, he writes, here's RFK Jr. calling for people to get the MMR vaccine. He says, the slow kid's in the back. He's completely playing into the narrative that measles is some huge threat and that MMR is a huge treatment despite spending years speaking about the dangers of it. That's pretty succinct. As well as the threat. It's like, that's the second point, right? Not only just the shot itself, but is this actually a threat? Well, I don't think it is. Now, Kevin Bass, PhD, put this out on February 27th. He said, doctors often claim that measles is making a comeback because of anti-vaxxers. We hear those claims all the time about a lot of these things. He goes, so I plotted the measles cases as a 10-year rolling average using CDC data, which even then we should wonder whether it's even accurate. And I found measles is actually not making it a comeback. These, quote, doctors and experts are simply lying to everybody. Here's the breakdown, guys. So, what you can see is around, there's 2 important points to make here. One is that there's zero indication, not even a blip. It is not going back up. It's at best stayed static. And if they're claiming no, they're not taking the shots, well, that's proof in and of itself, or rather evidence that it's not really having an effect one way or the other than other illnesses you gain from those dangerous things they give you, but that's a different conversation. The second point is to recognize that when the actual shot came out, it was already declining. Now, if you want to zoom in on this time frame, you can prove that and see very clearly that once the shot came out, it was after the fact, was already on a natural decline, because I think that was like anything like this. Again, within the germ theory mindset, once they circulate, natural immunity, and it gradually goes away. There's a lot of ways to go with that. The bottom line is, guys, this is not, why would you hype something like that? If we've had basically zero movement since the year 2000, despite variations on these, despite COVID-19, what are we talking about? That doesn't make any sense. So it's hype like we always have seen. That's what I think. Additionally, Dr. Saeed Haider points out the child that died in Texas apparently had pneumonia and RSV, and word is they vaccinated while sick from measles, which isn't supposed to be done. The child died and was called a measles death. Now, this is very common. Going back to things like, remember I pointed to the Ben Swann's thing about kratom, for example, where they were really trying to make sure you thought kratom was super dangerous. And so they were highlighting supposed deaths. And he broke down the paperwork and it showed that they highlighted someone who got a gunshot wound to the chest was deemed a kratom death because he had kratom in his system. Now, I'm not saying they believe that. They're just finding any of them and just using them for statistics. That's how these people work. That's not left or right. That's just your government. It says the child died and was called a measles death, par for the course. Post-vax will shed live measles virus, and the shot and test can easily misinterpret that as a wild-type measles infection. Throughout the history of vaccine misinformation in this country, one thing remains the same. Relabeling other illnesses as the disease for which vaccine hysteria is being whipped up. My God, that's the HIV/AIDS conversation. That is the COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 conversation. That is the sudden infant death syndrome. Some in adult, these things are just acronyms for things we don't know what's going on. Look it up. SID and SAD, the sudden adult death syndrome, and sudden infant death. Those aren't definitions. Those aren't accurate. If you look it up, we don't know what happened. It's a catch-all for children that randomly die, and we can't prove why. That's very easy to look up, and yet people diagnose them with that. How does that even make sense? If that means they know they're involved in some kind of scheme. That's how I would see that. But Jessica Rojas points out, nobody finds it strange that we had over 1,200 cases of the measles back in 2019, right? Where many of the sequences were vaccine sequences and 0 children died or were hospitalized. Anybody explain that? But we suddenly have a little over 120 cases, now 140 something or 76 that said, and 1 child dies. Although the mother is very upset that the media is using her child for the fear campaign, also should matter. She's saying that she was already sick with pneumonia and RSV. So that's 2 doctors who are speaking with the family, telling you what's being reported. I wonder where were they experimenting with a new mRNA MMR shot? That's a very real and valid question, whether RFK there or not, that I think we know we have to consider right now. This would not be the first time the government has experimented on children without their knowledge. We talk about the swine flu example. I play the clip all the time. They swapped it out at the last second and people got sick. That was a test. Here is Brian Tyson, MD. My sources are telling me that the 6-year-old did not die from measles. She died because the hospital refused to give her breathing treatments that the parents asked 4 times to give her. I swear on my grandma's grave that if the hospital continue to kill children for the sake of promoting a narrative, they will be held to pay. It's obviously his opinion. But they're just showing you that there's, at the very least, a lot of there's a lot of self-serving narratives flying around right now. Now, I find it interesting, and I'm not even trying to suggest a good or bad here. I do, because but what I'm going to get into is the high wire and whether they have spoken about this. My point is that I find it strange with the, Del Bigtree, Andrew Wakefield. I mean, they were vaxxed. That was like the primary two behind this film. Not the previous ones that came later necessarily, but the first one. And what I'm seeing here is that the last post he had on the 27th was about measles, February 27th. And it said the truth about measles. And it says and then Kaylee Means on RFK Jr.'s mission and toxic food fight. Interesting timing, right? Very supportive of him. And then this one on the March 1st is this thread that seems to continually talk about basically practical ways. It starts with the truth behind the measles outbreak. So this is on the 1st, guys. The next day is when that article came out, and they haven't posted since. So my mindset is one of two things. If they don't say anything, I think that's going to be pretty revealing. But I more so get the sense that this is pretty devastating. That if they're being honest about this, they're going to go, what the, that's, and trying to kind of find out if it's even on, did he even write that? Before, because if you were in their position, I would want to make absolutely sure that was, but it does seem to be the case. So I'm very interested to see what Dell has to say about this, because they have been fighting this fight alongside the rest of them. And now it seems that RFK is allowing, even promoting the shot that they've been fighting. So here was the one, the truth about the Disney measles outbreak. And the point is, it's exactly what you might think. We've talked about it before, revealing that vaccinated individuals played a significant role in the spreading of that disease. They hyped it anyway. And this is the one, they're included for you so you can watch them. It's a 2.5-hour show. The truth about measles. Before this and what he was saying. And you already know what he's going to say, guys. It's a lie, the hype around this. And now RFK is doing that. That's got to be pretty uncomfortable. Night Watch Nate posted this in response to that video we shared from Decensored News. And it just shows you two things in this that I think are important. One of which is that this is exactly the argument that we've been making and have been making for a very long time, but then he uses that to basically roll back into the idea that we should now be able to trust them or we should get there, which no, we shouldn't. Like I said before, we're finally at a place where we do question them regardless of whether we like them or not. That's how it should always have been. Do not let yourself get back to a place to where you allow yourself to believe that you can just take at their word what the government says in any context, no matter whether you think they're honest or not. They could be being played. But it's also something else. And here's the clip.
This system where government lies to Americans. The initial COVID vaccine, Americans flocked to get it. I think 95% of Americans went and got it. The CDC has now recommended an 8th booster, and only 23% of Americans at most are taking it. It's because 77% of Americans no longer trust CDC.
Okay. You know how long? I was making this point in 2022, 2023, as we saw the follow-up. And increasingly so as we got to the boosters at the end, where I was saying, if you remember, look at the uptake. Even the people who've been screaming trust the science aren't taking it, even though they're telling them they should. There's no way you misunderstand that. They're like, I don't agree. So even if they took them all and agree with you taking the first one, they're still going, but why? I don't agree with the last discussion. So they're now beginning to get more and more, they don't agree with what they're being told is the right thing to do by the people that they told us to listen to. Very clear. Now that shows you that they were not, the majority was never really there. They've lost it if it ever was. I just think that's important to note that that's now being used by the very people that I think were a part of it all. I mean, not RFK in particular in this case, but the government. And then he goes on to make the case that we should now with them, that he's going to work back to gaining that trust, which to me, it feels like we're being set up. I don't want to believe that, especially with the past work he's done, but I'm finding it harder and harder to miss it.
That's not a good thing. If we want uptake of vaccines, we need a trustworthy government.
Well, no, it is a good thing. It is the best thing I've ever seen that you're now not trusting the CDC and the government. Doesn't mean disregard, ignore, but it means consider, research for yourself. And if you don't know, of course, if you decide you want to err on the side of what you think are the experts, that's your choice. You should do your own research on these things. You should never take at face value what a power structure has ever told you. It's just basic logic, guys.
In other nations where they don't have mandates, like Japan and a few years ago in Germany, they had the same uptake as we did, but without any mandates, because people trust their government. That's what I want to restore to the American people and the vaccine program. And all vaccines are dropping, and they're doing that because people don't believe the government anymore. We need good science.
Okay, but isn't he the one been telling us that many of these shots are dangerous? So why at this moment would it be a bad thing that those are diminishing because we don't trust them? Isn't that the very thing he's been telling us we shouldn't be trusting them? Authority people and authority lie. I feel like we're watching two different people, guys.
I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to restore trust, and that will restore vaccine uptake.
How about new, you crazy Dutch bastard?
Oh, no cussing. But I mean, it's like we're dealing with two separate people. Or if you want to pretend that that's the only way he could do it, well, then why is it still happening? He's got the job now. Here's what Health Ranger had to say. He says, folks, we need to give RFK Jr. additional time and space to maneuver through the quagmire of the DC minefield. Very typical response that we get from the partisan field, right? It's not illogical. Maybe there may, but it doesn't change the fact that the stance is still hypocritical. Just because you have an excuse for why does not change that it is what it is, right? But it says most of the agency stands against him. I mean, we think that. That's the narrative. Do we know that? Frankly, I'm of the mind these days that most of them are on the same side. But it says, I do not believe we have lost him, which I don't even know what that means. Who's we? Lost from what? You get what I'm getting at here. And it says, I now believe that the Fox News piece was mostly authored by staffers. See, now that's what the MJ people are seeing. We know it wasn't even written by. Has anybody proven any of this? Or is this now Health Ranger's opinion that gets shared by others? Or you see how this continues to work? I mean, he's got a large following, almost 300,000 followers. I mean, it trickles through the partisan field. He now believes, which means there's nothing to back it up in his opinion. Why would RFK, look, the truth is, just like Trump's administration or Biden's administration, he put his name on that. You did that. That's RFK. You put your name on this. You wrote the article, or at least you're now pretending you did, and you're not speaking up that you were lied about. So that is a self-serving, give them the benefit of the doubt statement when you should never give the government the benefit of the doubt. But it says, I believe he was written by staffers, not by himself. I don't even know why you would write that when you don't know that. That seems like you're trying to gaslight. But it says, we need to have patience with this process. No, we don't. Hardly. The last thing we should have is patience. We should be waiting eagerly for actual change. And until it happens, holding their feet to the fire. But it says, but I will be scrutinizing as much as anybody. Well, clearly not. But we need to give him some time and space to make progress. And Derek says, what about Zionism? Dr. Henry Eli says, but he put his name on it. Exactly what we're talking about. He was provided with an executive brief that was outstanding and did not use it. He's going to have to own this one if regaining trust is his goal. Which, how do you regain trust when you get caught? If it's caught, no excuses. I agree. Jessica, I think I'll have these up next. Says the babies who are being jabbed don't have the luxury of being patient. You see, when you just throw a little bit of just basic logic to it, so you're okay with children taking it until we all work it out. Same with Trump. Same point, guys. That's self-serving. Here's another one. So you still don't get it. Kennedy made a fortune off your hopes and dreams. You bought what he was selling. You handed him power. Now that he's got what he wants, you're no longer needed. I don't get that sense. It's certainly one of the possibilities. I would lean more that direction than he's on your side at this point. But I mean, again, I get more of the sense this is somebody who's being driven to this point, whatever that means. Just my gut. Then he follows up a couple hours later and says, folks, we need to give RFK Jr. additional time and space to maneuver through. Oh, wait, that's this one. Sorry, I repeated that on accident. Oh, that's right, because there was comments beneath it. So he follows up a couple hours later. After consideration, I currently believe RFK Jr. has not betrayed Maha. And that, as much as we are super frustrated with the Fox News measles article, which I guess was written by him, since that's now the follow-up, we need to have patience with the necessary reforms. Sort of like trust the plan. I know this contradicts my own previous frustrations earlier today. I have reasons to change my view. Oh, what are they? And I believe we are going to see very positive results over time. And I am extending more trust and patience to Kennedy. You know what I get the sense of, completely my opinion, that somebody in the larger Republican team sport field reached out to him and said, what are you doing, man? You can't do that. You got to be on his side because we're fighting the evil Democrats. Okay. And then you follow up and go, trust, just give him time. Based on what, man? What changed your opinion? What's the new information? Nothing. So I'm so over trying to be, this is as clear as I've ever seen this. Not that I know everything about everything, but the fact that we can see even he was ruffled by this. And now it's just, let's see how it turns out. Now, even if that ends up being the right thing, now doing that was always the wrong thing to do. You can push and question and hold their feet to the fire and then still be going, yes, fine, they're glad they did it. You would be even more supportive if under your pressure, they still did exactly what you accomplished. Not some partial active, but the whole thing. It's always like this, guys. DC Drano, of course, doesn't talk about it. None of them are talking about this. None of them are even barely even referencing this conversation. But wellness company, who, by the way, was advertising for spike protein stuff, I think on TV. I find that interesting. But it says, breaking, as bird flu takes the worst turn for the worst. Even that, I don't agree with that at all. The wellness company steps up to support America's frontline farmers. But overall, I agree with McCall's stance on what they're doing and not giving those shots. But this is not McCall. It's the wellness company, despite him working with them. It says the new D11 bird variant shows concerning signs of mutation that may allow for human-to-human transfer. Are you now hyping the pandemic design? This is exactly what we were all fighting. The same thing that DC Drone and the rest were calling out from the Democrats, and they're doing the same thing. So what are you doing? We're now donating medical kits to America's frontline farmers to protect them. Medical kits with what? We're on the front line developing bird flu disaster. We need to know if we can keep them. We can know that they can keep themselves, their families, their workers safe. We can't simply wait on the government. Okay. What are they giving them? Emergency frontline worker. Okay. Antibiotics. That's good. Injections, nasal. Let's see. We don't need expensive, unnecessary experimental vaccines. We don't need mass culling of livestock. All right, this is the stance I agree with in general, like from McCullough and the rest of them, because he's been very clearly talking about. But the point, I'm just going through this just as we're looking at it, is about not pointing out the larger points that are happening around this, instead hyping. Oh, what? There we go. This is what Maha leadership looks like. That was my point. So at a time when the actual leadership of Maha, like the leader of Maha, comes out and literally goes the wrong direction, your response is to go, the wellness company, who, by the way, there's a whole thing swirling around that you should look into, is talking about giving things to farmers. And that's the leadership. Like, I just think that is a clear look over there scenario. After supplying 1 million Americans with medical emergency kits, the wellness company is now donating medical kits to America's frontline farmers to protect them from bird flu variants. Now, I'm going to go with this more. I wanted to read through this because of what might be in there. I'm curious to see what they include. Instead of ineffective and counterproductive measures, efforts should be focused on selective culling of test-positive sick birds. See? How are they testing them? I doubt they would even list that in there. But this is what I was sensing in this. And do your research. My point was about him pointing to this instead of recognizing or even talking about what RFK is doing in a lot of different ways. But if you're giving them kits to test for bird flu, doesn't that help grow the same thing? Worth considering. Now, here's another Republican on the February 23rd saying, please make sure your child is up to date on vaccines. Measles is highly contagious and serious. Fox News on the dangerous measles outbreak. It's not a partisan game, guys. It is about hype. Now, here is the defender, and you could find, just look up his name on this and find something. This is from RFK Jr., but he's been writing about this forever. And the speeches and the different appearances with Dell and Wakefield. The evidence around him fighting this has been long-standing. No proof MMR vaccine is safer than measles, mumps, or rubella infection, says physician groups that are calling out the MMR shot. Just to give you more to read on, written by Suzanne Burdick, PhD, that based on these physicians' reports and the evidence they're showing, that it's not a benefits outweigh the risk scenario. And so the risk you're taking from individual ones of those infections, let alone increased, all three of them together, is not safer. Here is something you should definitely watch if you haven't seen it. Vaxxed. This is not someone like just posted, but it's the only one I could find. From Cover Up to Catastrophe, 2016. It's the full documentary. It's worth watching. If you don't understand why they've been fighting this will show you. The simple answer is because they prove and this is Brian, is it Hook or Hooker? I think it's Brian Hook. He was from the CDC. He's a whistleblower. And look up his work. He's been adamant, talking about he's been one of the ones breaking down the child vaccine schedule, proving that children that take the injections are absolutely more sickly in every sense, medically proving this with plenty of science, but nobody cares. The point is that all of them have shown that the CDC covered up the fact, specifically black children, but in general, that these things increase your risk of autism, cause autism. On top of that, that the injection ingredients were dangerous. And this is a slam dunk. Watch it for yourself. Now, I'm also going to include some different articles that Derek and I think one of them, I think actually all of them are Derek for TLAV on just different points of RFK. So that's important to include. This is one where we're essentially taking his argument, defending because he was accurate, like he has been about a lot of stuff going back in time, back throughout his existence. And this one was about the ethnically targeted weapons point, which equally got bombed like ridiculous, and says the truth within RFK Jr.'s statements about ethnically targeted weapons. Now, again, the point going all the way back was all he was saying was, and you could prove it with the peer-reviewed science, that one, Israel absolutely was working on ethnic weapons focused through South Africa. That's a provable point. China arguably doing the same thing. And the point is, what he's highlighting is that you can prove that this shot, the whatever we're saying is going around, whatever that would be to you, was that specifically it was the Amish and Ashkenazi Jews were the least affected by this. And all he said was simply looking at other examples that it's, we should consider that those things exist. That's it. All factual statements, and people lost their minds. This one is a important back and forth. And this is Derek interviewing both RFK and Peter Hotez, and the difference of the two and the interesting points about, actually, no, this is the wrong one. Maybe I didn't get that one. There's another article he put out. Oh yeah, it's right here. There's another one, by the way, where he interviews RFK Jr. in kind of off the elevator, which is important as well, but important information. Read this and then compare it to what's happening today. Different world. Also, debunking RFK Jr.'s pro-Israel talking points. Now, that'll be relevant in a minute. Just included right here. Now, another note on this, of course, is the Epstein files, or whatever we want to pretend this actually is. As Patrick Henderson points out, we're going to release the files. Yay! This has been the whole thing. It's on our desk, and it's going to be there no matter what. No, we're not going to apologize for taking down the bad guys. It's just a lot of hype. Maybe it'll happen tomorrow. Hasn't though yet. Now here's the new information. This is posted yesterday, and it says it's infuriating. Bondi confirms all Epstein files are in. Details what could be redacted. Okay, so this was yesterday. As far as I know, we don't have some new, fake phase 2 binder going around. So here's what she had to say. And I'll actually play the clip, but just quick points. It says Pam Bondi on Monday on Fox News said that thousands of withheld files on deceased pedophile Jeffrey Epstein are now in the hands of the FBI. Adding certain redactions will be made with the explanation provided for each one, which I guarantee won't happen. But the explanation, or at least that you can't. Her point was, and I'll play it for the video, that you'll be able to prove that. Are we really going to pretend that's going to happen? No, they're going to tell you what they claim it was, and they'll all eat it up and pretend we know, like we already showed you. But interesting, thousands of files? So why did you guys then pretend that that the first example was the only after people were like, that's not actually the full thing, did they go, yeah, I felt the same. Watch the way the video starts. It just seems so fake, the way that they respond and everything. Either way, I think it's all fake anyway. My point is that thousands more information, and you let us believe that this was the full, and it wasn't somewhat new. It was all the information they put out was stuff we already had. All of it. And it says, the Department of Justice released the first phase of the Epstein files, an over 100-page document on Thursday, but it failed to contain a majority of new information. No, it was all. All of it has been seen in the past. It says, Hannity pressed Bondi about additional potential redactions in the files. And she says, for national security. Oh, perfect. National security about a list of sexual blackmail. Okay. So pretty sure that only means one of two things. That either there are people involved with U.S. national security that are on that list, or facilitated that list, or wrote the list, or whatever else, or another country that they really don't want you to see. I think both are the case. What are you confused about? Actually, I'll wait to show you a tweet from somebody that just puts it hits the nail on the head. Some grand jury information, again, which is always going to be confidential, but we'll see. Let's look through them as fast as we can. Yeah, is that what we want? Rush through and but it says, can it get it out to the American people because the American people have a right to know. Now, again, I do want it to be immediate. My point is I don't think we should have anything redacted. But it says not only on that, but on Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and all these kids. They keep broadening this out. Just give us one thing that we can verify that gives us anything to do. Then we can go from there. Okay. I think they're trying to muddy the waters. Again, the point is Martin Luther King, we already know, guys, the civil trial was clear. The U.S. government was involved. They're not, what are they going to reveal? On top of that, they also float the idea of, what was the other one? MLK Jr. No, it was this one. There's another one. But even on the Kennedy point, everybody involved with the so-called release of, it was Kennedy. We're talking about Epstein. The Kennedy point is that they are very aware that there's an Israeli involvement in all that, if not completely responsible. And everybody in this inner circle, both for a Mossad agent and the killing of JFK, are connected to the entire task force are wildly pro-Zionist or Zionist themselves. It's very easy to see. They're proudly telling you that. Standing alongside, that's even the joke here. Standing alongside, I closed it, Israeli flag. Why is there an Israeli flag? Are you back in Israel? Well, why? Are we noting that now, right, in many cases today, they have U.S. press conferences, U.S. things with American and Israeli flags? How are we missing this stuff? And it says, not only on that, but on Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and all of the cases that the Biden administration left out for years. Oh, so it's only been 4 years? Really? Pretty sure pretty sure it's been going on a lot longer than that. So, okay, so if we know the documents have been there well longer than 4 years, why is she only pointing out Biden's administration? Because they're all dishonest. Because there's a very clear game being played here, which is blame the Democrats, give them just enough to make them think something's changing while we hide what's actually going on. That's how I see it. Either way, are you really going to pretend it's unique to the Biden administration? It's just dishonest. Anybody with a brain can see that right now. Here's the clip.
There was an expectation that this was going to be bigger. You had the same expectation.
We all did.
I'd make a petty point. It's just funny to me. I get the sense from a lot of these people, and more as the years go on, sort of like the cartoonish, you look at the corporate media today and look at it from 20 years ago, it's like what, like they become what you used to pretend they were. Right, like you look at it's like the Babylon Bee point or whatever is like a satire. You look at the satire 6 months later, that's what they are. It's the kind of the thing. My point is left and right. We're seeing this I think it's because of who is actually controlling the outcome, and they want this country to be easily manipulated. So unintelligent people that don't even know half the time they're being tricked. That's what I see as all of them, whether it's KJP, Kellyanne, or Lewitt, or what is it, Leavitt, or this person. Now, I'm not saying I know that it's just the way that they handle themselves. And I think this response it's my personal opinion, but it's fine.
You had the same expectation.
We all did.
We all did. Just sounds silly to me, but let's continue.
And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, Sean.
Oh, so it didn't immediately sink in that isn't the full picture? It's obviously not true.
I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shocked.
Oh, the source meaning what? Ian Miles Chong or somebody else online that was making that case? I'm not even disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I'd love to know where this comes from and how do we know that's even accurate? That they're all sitting on these things? Okay, let's just say that's exactly what's happening. Probably happening. Isn't that Trump's administration? Okay, so if the argument is there's somebody holding this up, why is it still happening? Didn't we already get past this? Aren't you now, okay, now we got all the information? What's the holdup here? Like the point is, yeah, okay, redactions, all of this. Where's the person then? Who was this culprit that you guys caught? Shouldn't they be marched in front of us? And this is the Democrat that tricked us all? If you're not asking that question, I think that answers everything. Oh, dang it.
Source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by
Democrats.
Hopefully all of them. Friday at 8 a.m. Thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course. And Cash is going to, Director Patel is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay.
Here, really quickly, here's Cash.
Side by side, and that can't happen unless we have an election that changes the commander-in-chief's seat.
Pressure of a new Trump administration against Iran.
Aaron's absolutely right. We should be side by side, and that can't happen unless we have an election that changes the commander-in-chief. And when we are back in power with President Trump, you will see what we did with Israel and the Prime Minister and our special forces and their intel operation. We will be standing side by side with them. We will shut off the machinery that feeds money into Iran. We will no longer have 100 hostages still in captivity, Israeli and American and otherwise, by Hamas and Iran's Hezbollah mercenary forces. Donald Trump rescued 50 hostages and detainees. That's more than every president before him combined. And I hope he wins on November 5th. And Aaron's right. We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel. And that
pretty simple. But otherwise, America first, though, right? Wake up and prioritize Israel. America first.
I want to be clear because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more.
No, you promised more. Let's be clear about that.
You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
I mean, guys, isn't that stupid? Okay, so doesn't that immediately undermine your opinion of her intelligence? If you're going to believe that is everything, despite what we all know about this massive... No, that is you guys hoping we did not call your BS and then going, oh, yeah, some other thing. And we're going to now give us more time. We'll get it out there. Like every other time before this, left or right, going back as far as you want to look.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. There were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah. What source? Who did that? This isn't journalism here. You're talking about somebody who told you a crime is committed. Americans deserve to know what's going on. To me, so far, this is a bunch of narrative with nothing verified. And that we've already caught this administration more in a short period of time, more than I've ever seen, just making stories up to fit their narratives.
So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, we're going to go.
So why should we have until Friday to give us an explanation of why that happened? Shouldn't we know immediately? Shouldn't you already know why? Why does anybody take this stuff at face value? Seems really stupid to me. Now, by the way, just some of the comments and see the point, just in case you're new to this channel. I mean, obviously frankly, I should say flatly, I shouldn't be undermining and, it belittles the point, I think. But sometimes these people suck. My point is, if you don't recognize that go back and look at what I used to talk about with KJP and the rest. The point is, it's not unique to left and right. I frankly don't think most of these people are very intelligent. You just listen to the way they speak, the way that they can't really make good, clear points. I think people like this, in a lot of senses, have been put here, allowed to get these because they're easily manipulated, whether it's partisan stuff or because they're rabid Zionists. I don't know. Just my opinion. I just saw a comment that I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to just hate women or hate on the left or the right. It's not even like that. It's very clearly a government thing. I'm sure you can see that by now.
Go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein, because there are a lot of victims.
Well, you had identified in phase one over 254. Okay. Now, is that the only thing that would be redacted? Will everything else be made public that you get in your possession?
Yeah, the FBI they haven't looked at the thousands of pages of documents that they've just received Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're to believe that this information's been around for decades and they've never seen this stuff before? So what about the transition of the other 100 documents? So they held that for this time period, they gave that to you, but they didn't have the rest of it? This just doesn't logically line up for me, guys. You tell me, what do you think? This doesn't make any sense. This is just like a bunch of narrative in the background when I don't know. I'm not going to guess. But to me, that shows you that somebody's just pulling your leg here. It doesn't make any sense.
The Cash has a team going through them, and it's always about protecting the victim. But you know what? We believe in transparency, and America has the right to know. The Biden
protecting the victim unless they're Palestinian, of course.
Administration sat on these documents. No one did anything with them. And why were they sitting in the Southern District of New York? I want a full report on that. You know, sadly, these people don't believe.
Okay, I would too. Wouldn't you? Okay, so Republicans, let's make sure we get that. Let's not allow the narrative to dictate the conversation. Let's go, okay, good. She just told you we should get that. So demand that we get evidence of what happened, who held it, and why. Not just the narrative that can rolls in to justify, or look over there, Muslims and pedophiles, or whatever the next narrative is to get you to react to something else. Demand evidence, not a screenshot of evidence that proves what actually happened, and accountability. That's a crime, right? If somebody at that location was withholding documentation, trying to hide it from American people and the current government administration, they should be held accountable, right? Let's wait and see.
Believe in transparency, but I think more, unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't believe in honesty, and it's a new day.
A lot of them, of course, being Democrats. Like, am I the only one that feels like this is almost childish at this point? Like her argument at one of the leading news channels, if you want to call it that, in the United States, is to argue that the Democrats are just dishonest and hide things. Like we don't have mountains of evidence of all sides of our government doing that as far back as you want to look. I can't believe people can be this silly. That's why I don't believe it's the majority. I really don't.
It's a new administration, and everything's going to come out to the public. The public has a right to know. Americans have a right to know.
And
right. So narrative, right? Nothing, action's the thing. You have a right to know all this stuff. And already they've shown you that they don't care about that. Am I missing something? People like to hear what they want to hear. That's what works in partisanship.
And that goes the same with the JFK files,
JFK,
RFK files,
Martin
MLK.
Luther King. Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What are the things that, and maybe some people don't understand the need to redact. In the case of a victim, that should be pretty obvious to people. What are the other things that maybe you would have to redact?
Well,
national security?
No, of course, national security, some grand jury information, which is always going to be confidential, but we'll see. Let's look through them as fast as we can, get it out to the American people, because the American people have a right to know.
Okay. I'm trying to remember who was the Attorney General under Biden. I forget. Who was it? My point, I was just going to use KJP because I just made that just on my mind, but where was it? In any case, the point is, my point was to say, take somebody who is a Democrat. If this was KJP sitting here telling you all this, all the Republicans that are going, let's just wait and see. Let's just give her a chance to play it out. Would they be doing that for them? Merrick Garland, was that? I forget, but no, Ray was the FBI. The point is, either way, if it was a Democrat, does anybody anywhere in this conversation believe that the people who are right now going, let's just give her a chance to see, let's let her deliver, would they be saying that if it was a Democrat? Okay, if your answer is no, if you are on Heartland, you're going, no, I wouldn't trust it, then you're a hypocrite. It's not about you're choosing to trust a person in the government, even if one of them is more trustworthy. The bottom line is that you should not be trusting either one of them, and you don't know either way. It's about the outcome.
Not only on that, but on Kennedy, on Martin Luther King, on all of these cases that the Biden administration has just sat on for all these years.
Yeah, and so did the one before it, and the one before it, and the one before it. Even like, okay, JFK and Martin Luther King. It only existed for Biden's administration? That's crazy. I can't believe it's only been 4 years. Just please, this is worthy of ridicule, and it is small.
So yeah, it's really, it's not sad. It's infuriating that these people thought that they could sit on this information, but Democrats, they can't. It's a new day, and we believe in transparency, and it's going to come out. And when we redact things, Sean, what we're going to do is not just pull pages out like they used to do.
They being all of our government, anyway, same point. I'm just embarrassed for her.
If something's redacted, you will know the line, and you will know why it's redacted, like a victim's name, identifying information of a victim.
Let's talk a little
bit. That didn't just happen. We just saw the page, the book, the blank entire pages. Like not blank, but blacked out. The whole page is black. There's no notations. There's no explanation. We haven't even got it. There's not even been any following information. Okay, so maybe she means next time. Let's give her the bet. Let's just wait and see. Shall we? Trust the plan, guys. I will bet you anything. Somebody wants to bet me? Bring it on. I bet you that doesn't happen. I find that really hard to believe. And even, look, here's the point I keep making. Even if she wants that, even if she believes that, I bet you it doesn't happen for obvious reasons. Now, as I was going to say before, here's Sal the Agorist saying, reminder, people who have hidden a list of child rapists from you for half a decade need those taxes in the mail by April 15th. That's perfect. And alarming and real, but it's funny because it's, it's true. I mean, it's not unique to one side. It's been going on a very long time. It is the government, which is why I like Sal's work. And this is the one I was talking about. So the general says, Attorney General Pam, the general has the account on Twitter, says, Attorney General Pam Bondi announces that national security information will be redacted from the Epstein files. And Kim Iverson says, what sort of national security issues would there be in a pedophile ring? Doesn't take it's not a brain twister, guy. This is pretty obvious. There's no way around it. That means at some level, the U.S. national interest was intertwined with something on that list. Now, of course, if you could, let's just make up something that might make, this is what tends to happen in the Barst field, is that you could argue that maybe there was an insider investigating them in there and they don't want their names to be revealed. I mean, that would even make sense. But you know what the difference would be is that we get information about it that we can verify for ourselves. I think we actually know what this I think the evidence, I should say, already shows you what this is. That there are people in high positions of power, even currently in the government, and I'm not even saying necessarily the current administration, but just currently in our government, that are on this list, or those that were just recently in administration. Myron Gaines just makes the obvious point, I think, here, is that Pam Bondi says Israeli national security information will be redacted from the Epstein files, which I think we also know. Don't forget what Acosta told you guys. We just shared you that. It's a public statement that he was told to back off because he was intelligence. And from there, more information has clearly come out showing you that there's Mossad and CIA connections, which makes perfect sense with the way the world is going right now. This is how it works. Now, on top of that, also in a similar conversation, FBI refuses to produce evidence on the Seth Rich laptop. Are we still pretending it's a Democrat here, guys? Or are we just starting to see the common thread? It isn't just the Epstein files. This Blue Apple's account, it's a writer-researcher for Zierhedge, that's his account on Twitter, says it isn't just the Epstein files that the Department of Justice is withholding from the public, despite claiming that the, quote, most transparent administration in history, right, which that's actually one of those examples, by the way. Search that phrase. You'll weirdly find almost every single Elon circling sycophant who have shared that 6 times over the last 40 minutes. Exactly the same way. Same thing. Look it up. But it says the DOJ under Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI under new Director Kash Patel have issued a response indicating they will fail to follow through on the release of the evidence concerning Seth Rich. Now, again, we have to actually see the outcome here. But simply, we've already seen with the Epstein, pretty much everything, in my opinion, they've already shown you they're not doing what they promised. This person, this Cleavager, what they're citing, journalist, lawyer, so on. He simply says, the DOJ told me this afternoon they will not be getting any Seth Rich records on March 10th. So it's just, these are things that we would have argued are important, or that are important, but argued that they would have thought were important to release. Remember, just for those that don't remember this, because it's been a while, we'll include some discussions about this from 2017. Lawsuit alleges Fox News and Trump collaborated to create fake story about Seth Rich killing. Because remember, this went through both administrations, guys. That's always the point here. Audio, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Seymour Hersh confirmed Seth Rich was the DC email leaker. This was a very important conversation. And then Assange actually basically admitted, I think accidentally, that Seth Rich was his source in this interview. And you can watch it for yourself. And then I'll include just the search for the tag Seth Rich. You can read more about it. Point is, though, this is an important kind of cornerstone that I think really does prove that it's not a partisan thing. Whether it's Israel, whether our deep state, whatever you want to talk about, it shows you that across multiple administrations, they actively help covering these things up, and it goes back as far as you want to look. Now, in a quick foreign policy overlap, before we talk about some of the anti-Semitism discussion, I just want you to see what else is happening around this. So as they're continuing to deviate, like, whatever these swirling circle of liars are around all of this, they aren't talking about most anything we're talking about today, which are seriously the important discussions, but also the foreign policy points, not even getting into the obvious genocide that they're still ignoring. Israel attacks military sites in Syria. Right. I mean, what are we talking? Who are we pretending that's happening here? Are they now fighting themselves? Are they fighting the group there? No, what they're doing, if you look into this, is essentially just destroying resources, infrastructure for their ongoing benefit and takeover of Syria. Or alternatively, fighting off the small remnants of groups that are still pushing back. My point is, either way, Israel is illegally attacking in Syria, illegally occupying Syria, and illegally deploying troops into Syria. Like somebody just called it the Balfour Declaration 2.0. They are literally taking this territory. That's a point I keep making that I don't know why is not huge right now. Not because, like I'm saying, because anybody else should be talking about this, which is, did we not just spend decades under the argument that we're doing this to stop Iran and we're fighting against it, under the guise that the U.S., not Israel, was fighting in Syria? Or rather the coalition and the U.S. and Britain, whatever else, right? Okay, if you ever needed a better example that all of them were not only fighting wars for Israel, but were spending their resources, their propaganda, their efforts for Israel's outcome, for their benefit, you don't need to look anywhere else. The U.S. government spent billions, if not more. Same with the UK. Occupied, terrorized, destroyed, assassinated, did everything you could imagine in Syria. And the moment that they take the shift of power takes, Israel rushes in. Israel occupies the area. Israel starts deploying bases. Israel deploys troops. It's all very easily provable. I've shown you on the show already. It's covered all over the place, just not in corporate media in the United States. How do you miss that? So they fought this for Israel? Apparently so. Or Israel swung in and took it the last second. They still didn't care. Either way you look at it, I think it shows you a very clear picture. On top of that, Israel and the United States reject a French proposal to stop illegally occupying Lebanon. Why you even need that, and why we don't have the law that exists, that they're, I don't know what's, obviously we know why, because they're the ones that are basically kinetically in power and don't care. But it says after weeks after the February 18th deadline, which is well past now, for the Israeli withdrawal that they agreed to from Lebanon, after that's come and gone, IDF troops are not only still there, they're encroaching into further territory. I'm sure you didn't hear about that anywhere in the corporate media or mainstream alternative media or even most of the independent media. I don't know why. It's a huge deal. We've brought it up kind of tangentially pretty much every show since we covered it in earnest, which is that Craig Murray has been there every day. And he was, at least, I'm not sure where he is this moment, but he was there showing you. They violated the ceasefire. They shot people right here. They bombed a UNIFIL UN location. Crickets. Enforcement of the ceasefire has been effectively non-existent, both in Lebanon and Gaza or anywhere else you want to look. So it doesn't just continuing to let them break in law and do whatever they want, take whatever they want. And we're talking about Israeli government here, Zionist government. Plenty of Jewish people around the world, including the groups in the protest aspect we'll get to, who are pushing back. Trump eases, and by the way, for the podcast, all these are antiwar.com articles, which you should be checking out. Trump eases restrictions on airstrikes, special operations raids. Oh, good. So now you remove human rights restrictions for selling weapons to tyrants, because why not, right? Money, money, money. And then, of course, you ease restrictions back on airstrikes again. So, yeah, you got a war-making, money-making boon going on right now. You're just wasn't this the peace president, though? So you remove the restriction on selling weapons to people violating human rights. You remove restrictions on airstrikes, which allows the military to do what it wants without even checking with the White House. But yeah, it's all peace now. Peace, nothing but clear skies and peace going forward, right? Donald Trump has eased restrictions on U.S. airstrikes and special operations raids in areas of countries officially considered combat zones by the United States, which means basically half the world right now, giving U.S. military commanders the freedom to launch attacks without permission from the White House, which is nothing new. The largest non-nuclear bomb was launched in his last administration while he was eating cake at Mar-a-Lago. It was a real story. He didn't even know it was deployed. He publicly said that. It's insane. Of course, we also know this since we referenced it a second ago, but the U.S. government has launched 3 airstrikes against al-Shabaab in Somalia within 2 weeks. And that's what I wrote here. This is the peace president, apparently, as Dave DeCamp said. Is there anyone on earth covering this? Bombing Somalia, it's very clearly important. Now, I think overall, whether we're talking about Lebanon or Gaza or Syria or all these different engagements of war are for Israel. Now, Somalia, it's a mixed bag, but let's not forget two important things. That Somalia has been being pressured to normalize with Israel for a very long time. They have a new person recently, basically in power, who has recently spoken with Netanyahu, and they argue that might be more of a chance. You know what the only holdup seems to be, if you listen to any of the conversations? Al-Shabaab. The group, now I'm not saying I support, or it's not even about that. It's the point that this is a group who very clearly does not want normalization with Israel. And the argument is that the government is hesitant to do so because if they did, Al-Shabaab would make their life hell. So, U.S. starts bombing Al-Shabaab, or has been for a long time. Doesn't mean that's the only reason, guys, but you need to start understanding the way that these things work and whether your tax dollars and your human, whether U.S. soldiers are putting their lives on the line for nothing other than Israel's interest. If you're a military person out there, it's time to start asking those questions because, my God, if you don't realize, you could call us treasonous, if you will. Now, going forward to the last two main parts. So we talked about the measles point. Here's RFK Jr. coming out yesterday with probably one of the most shockingly obvious unconstitutional statements about free speech that I've seen. Now, it's not really any different than Trump or the rest of them, but this RFK Jr. saying this, especially as the HHS, it doesn't make any sense. It shows you that there's something wrong here. And it seems like everybody's picking up on this. Now, here's what he wrote. Anti-Semitism, and by the way, this clip we showed you, did I show you already, or do I have it lined up here? There's a clip where, oh no, I have it lined up. It's coming up, where they basically said the same thing at the Republican debate. Anti-Semitism, like racism, is a spiritual and moral. What do you mean, like? That's like saying anti-Muslim, like racism. Okay, well, it is racism. Now, of course, we're not going to get into the obvious misrepresentation of what a Semite is and whether Israelis are even close to that. The point is, whatever you think a Semite, anti-Semitism is racism. It's the same difference. So why would you frame it like that? Because it's something special, right? It's a special, its own category. That's why. But it's not true. It's racism like any other racism. It's not special or unique or with special treatment. That's crazy to me. Now, anti-Semitism, first of all, is simply being, I guess, anti-Semites. Again, against a Semite, which Palestinians are Semites. So really what they've turned it into over the years is anti-Jewish people. Well, if you are against Zionism, they say you're anti-Semite. So we see where the real issue goes, especially as Jews who call them Zionist or say Zionists are bad are then called anti-Semites or self-hating Jew. No, so it's about Zionism, which is clear as day when you look into the conversation. But the point I'm getting at is that anti-Semitism, whatever you think when you're saying that, or whatever you say that they call that, is your right to say and think and express what you want. Now, if we don't like that in this country, and we're going to publicly discuss why we shouldn't be allowed to say what we think and want, then let's have that conversation. But let's not pretending like it's okay to be, oh, this is just one bad category. Well, guess what? You're just like the Democrats. Exactly, because this is the woke right, like the woke left. It's the same identity politics driven censorship that then gets broadened out into whatever they want in that moment. Right now, they're calling Palestinian protests anti-Semites. The ADL provably got caught, just like before, hyping up anything Palestinian related, and we know that. But that doesn't change the fact that even if you're screaming Jewish people are the worst thing in the world, you have a right to say that. You have a right to think that. And I have a right to say you're a disgusting person. That's how it works. At what point did we allow our government to start saying that you're not allowed to think and say these things? Only for one country. He goes on to say, anti-Semitism, like racism, is a spiritual and moral malady that sickens societies and kills people with lethalities comparable to history's most deadly plagues. My God. So okay, does any other race do that? Well, if it's not the case, then what's the point you're making here? Why is anti-Semitism so especially deadly? Well, it's not. That's just an idea. It's not deadly. People who commit crimes are what cause deadly things. So we already have things that stop that. It's called laws and enforcement and police, whatever you think about those things. So why is this especially different? It's not. It's just an idea. There's plenty of crazy ideas out there that can lead to people doing dangerous things. That doesn't make the idea itself criminalized. Their governments have been trying forever, whether it's communism, whether it's anything. I have my thoughts on all of it. But I also argue that obviously, if we believe in free speech, like they pretend they do, then you have a right to think them too. It says, in recent years, the censorship and false narratives of the woke cancel culture have transformed our great universities into greenhouses for this deadly and virulent pestilence. Can you honestly believe the goal of this person to reference the woke cancel culture while you are literally telling people that they can't say a certain thing about a certain culture, otherwise they get canceled? I mean, it's even beyond that. In fact, this is like the woke right with legal and violence enforcement, because they're telling you they're going to deport people. They're going to put you in prison. On the other side, they just called you a racist, but both are bad. Both are censorship. The point is, this is the escalation of the narrative through your government. The rest is narrative, right? Your government has stepped up the game. Now you're getting threatened. You might go to jail. Making America healthy means building communities of trust and mutual respect based on, so now the primary health focus for him is what Israel said. Anybody surprised? Shouldn't be. It's been about the most transparent part of this whole conversation for a long time. Well, here's the release from the HHS about anti-Semitism, because that makes no sense at all. HHS, ED, and GSA announced additional measures. Okay, additional. So interesting how we already have measures for this. There's other things that are not even addressed yet, but his first thing is to address, well, one of the first things, additional measures to fight something that already has laws in the books. The only reason that happens is when there's political pressure or you're being forced. Now it says today, or I guess you could add, you also believe in the agenda for Zionism to take over everything. But it says today, the Department of Health and Human Services and ED and GSA announced a comprehensive review, guess what, of Columbia University. All the way back to the fake discussion. I mean, we've already gone through all of this. You realize that the people who put on most of that were Jewish organizations? Weird how they don't mention that. Jewish Voices for Peace. Now it says they review their federal contracts and grants in light of ongoing investigations. Oh, so just like everything else, before you even have an outcome, you're going to yank these things. Or rather, it does say review. So let's wait and see what they do next. But I wouldn't be surprised if they suddenly start pulling these while they're investigating. But what's important to highlight is this is financial manipulation. From my perspective, there's no crime that's taking place here. There's a hype narrative of something we can prove is actually wildly inaccurate, even more so prove that they've been actually instigated by Zionists who are absolutely doing the thing that they then claim. It's on record. Even Stefanik got caught lying about it in the middle of Congress by the police that were there. And we'll get to her in a second. So you are literally pulling funding from a place, which I disagree with a lot of the woke politics and everything else, but it's funny how you're now applying a different side of the woke politics to go after people who are also pushing woke politics. In order to do what? There's two things. To send a message to anybody else not towing the line, who might lose funding. That's what they really care about. They'll just toe the next line to get the funding. But secondarily, if they come out tomorrow and say, we were wrong, we're going to expel every person that was there, we will never speak bad of Israel again, I'd be willing to bet you anything that they would stop doing this. To me, the primary goal of what Zionism is trying to accomplish is acquiescence, is for you to alter your actions. Right? They want you to learn. It's like Twitter with you're suspended for a few days while you learn your lesson. They're trying to engineer your worldview and through the highest levels of power in this country. Now it says, given Columbia's ongoing inaction in the face of relentless harassment of Jewish students. That's how they write that. I mean, almost every single example we've gone over from the ones they point to have been fake, false, hyped up. Basically, someone standing there going, you're in my way and I'm threatened. Or faking being stabbed in the eye, or faking a Nazi symbol that turns out to be a Jewish person. I mean, this has all happened. That's in no way to suggest that there's not anti-Semitism or that there wasn't violent crime committed by some of them. It's just objectively false what they're trying to create from this. And on top of that, you could prove without batting an eye that the amount of wildly over-the-top racism and violent action against Palestinians in these schools and everywhere else is over the top, which is typically how this works. Now, it says the task force will also conduct a comprehensive review of more than $5 billion in federal grants committed to Columbia University. Okay, are you going to do the same to now right-leaning colleges? They're going to start kicking people out for screaming things about Israel? Isn't it the same conversation? No, but it's going to, just like we had the left applying it one way, now we got the right applying it the other way. You know what the outcome is? The same thing. The government controlling your speech for a foreign country or for a foreign agenda for ultimately being able to dictate your worldview. But again, for far more nefarious things that we're not going to, I always want to go into where I think this is going. That's not the conversation for today. But then it goes on to say the task force review is the first major action announced from the multi-agency task force to combat anti-Semitism. These are the first major things they're doing. All the rest seems to be a bunch of nonsense, lies, and deceptions. This has all been for Israel. Seemingly everything, quite frankly. I mean, it's just impossible to miss. Trump's executive order, additional measures to combat anti-Semitism. And it says, quote, Americans have watched in horror for more than a year now as Jewish students have been assaulted and harassed on elite university campuses. Unlawful encampments and demonstrations have completely paralyzed day-to-day campus operations, depriving Jewish students of learning opportunities, said Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. Let me read that sentence again. Unlawful encampments and demonstrations have completely paralyzed day-to-day operations. Okay, so objectively for anybody on the campus, right? And then goes on to say, depriving Jewish students of learning. Oh, so it's more important that Jewish students are affected than everybody else that's currently also affected? See, this is how they make people believe it's about Jewish people. And I don't know if Linda McMahon knows that or not. The point is that Zionists are the ones creating this construct. That's why there's major Jewish organizations out there that are screaming about this if you just look. And it goes, at this time, no immediate contracts are being taken. See, I'm willing to bet you if they acquiesce that won't happen. It's a threat, fall in line, or we're going to yank the rug out. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, guys. The ones that came before Congress and begged for forgiveness, they let them alone. It's how this works. This is dishonest, and it's unconstitutional, and it's frankly a lie. The New Republic covered this, but so did a lot of people. This was a very easily documented. I mean, even Alan Greenblatt basically made this case. The ADL officially admits it counts pro-Palestine activism as anti-Semitic. The Anti-Defamation League has abandoned all pretense of tracking anti-Semitism properly in its 2023 report. It's true, guys. This is the case because they're not trying to pull. They're saying this is anti-Semitism. Palestinians they believe that they support Hamas. Therefore, it is an extension of the narrative to people who are simply supporting people who are being subjugated. I mean, even a further extension. So you supporting Palestinians because you claim they're racist means that I hate you? How in the world does a logical person follow along with that broken logic? It says, actually, numbers can't lie. The ADL shifted the way it counts these things in order to call all Palestinian marches anti-Semitic. Here's Jonathan Greenblatt. That's funny. I didn't see this. I was trying to post this beneath it just to be funny, but it wouldn't let me. Where was it? This right here. I'll show you next. But he says, this morning, the ADL's National Leadership Summit, I spoke about where we are now, turning point for American Jews. The numbers don't lie. Anti-Semitism at historic levels. ADL count. Oh, it's right there. Look at that. ADL counts all anti-Zionist and pro-Palestine activism as anti-Semitism. There's your fact check. You're not going to hear that from Elon Musk and the rest. This is from the Jewish Platform Forward. ADL counts 3,000 anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th, 2/3 tied to Israel. It's right here. I'll include this. It's telling you very clearly we're talking about simply people protesting for Palestine. And they'll say, yeah, they're racist. That's very simple. I simply highlighted that when he said this. Numbers don't lie. Historic levels. Time to step up. And I said, here's Elon below depicted discussing the very high bar that the ADL is setting in its fight against anti-Semitism. If you get the joke, hopefully you do. Funny. But here's what Michael Tracy said. RFK didn't just pen a missive expressing his opinion, because this person's going, it's his opinion, loser. It's just people are so ridiculous on this platform. All he said was, what the hell does it have to do with the Department of Health and Human Services? Right? Anti-Semitism. And so this guy, let's see how big he is. Not much, but somebody who is of the mind that he thinks that's just what he tweeted because he didn't look anywhere else. Otherwise, he would have seen that it's a big reported discussion. He goes, it's his opinion, loser. He has every right to form his own views, right or wrong. So he follows up and he goes, well, he didn't just pen an opinion. He announced a new intergovernment initiative, which he did. We already showed it to you. That's the page right there. Hilariously including Health and Human Services for some reason to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses. It just shows you that Israel is their agenda has overcome everything. Sam Husseini, same point from this post from Secretary Kennedy, says, hilarious how he pretends to be anti-censorship and anti-woke while being pro-censorship and pro the most deranged sort of woke. But this is a pattern with Kennedy. I blew the whistle on him a long ago when he was supposed to testify against online censorship and turned it into Israel worship session. Somebody should be following. Dr. Michael Rechtenwald says, same response to his post, Kennedy ironically likened anti-Semitism to a plague, and speaking of woke censorship on college campuses, when nothing has been more censored and more than speech aimed at fake woke Semites and their mass murdering ways. It's a double tragedy that he's under a compulsion to make this statement, which I don't know why we would assume, but it's possible, given that Israel killed his father and uncle. This isn't public health, it's public psychosis. It's interesting. And I simply said, again, guys, I've been trying to tell you that this is where the administration was always heading. Now, you can argue Kennedy's not the one calling these shots, but you would also expect him to speak up if it was not in line with his principles and integrity, if you believe he is who you think he is. But here's a couple of clips from Trump that I think are important for you to see, in case you haven't seen them already. The first one is him on a radio show telling you he thinks that Congress used to be, I think it still is, and should be controlled by Israel. I still don't know how in the world this did not go everywhere. I think it is. I think we know why, because this is a controlled, the media sphere, the flow of information has been controlled for a long time now. Not entirely. You hand this link to your neighbor, they can still look at. The point is that it is controlled in ways we can't even imagine. Otherwise, things like this, not because of me, but it was out there before me, should be everywhere. This statement is insane. And we went through the whole clip. It's not out of context.
You know, the biggest change I've seen in Congress is Israel literally owned Congress. You understand that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it was so powerful. It was so powerful. And I think you know exactly what I'm saying. They had such power. Israel had such power, and rightfully, over Congress.
How in the world do you think that makes sense? Here's the next one. Now, this one is him saying that he's going to remove all the Jew haters from the country. Same point. Now, despite him at some points referencing something illegal, which we're going to get to at the end point of this, which is them just deeming these things illegal, therefore now it makes sense. It doesn't change the fact. Whether they decide to call you saying the word red illegal, it doesn't change the fact that that's your free speech right to say the word red. It's the way that broken systems work. The point is, obviously, as I already said, let's just say you genuinely hate Jewish people. I think you're gross. That's my opinion. For hating people for whether you know who they are or not. But you have a right to say and think those things. That's actual free speech, right? That's free. That's your freedom of ideology and your freedom of speech. You can think and say what you want. We pretend anyway in this country. Secondarily, as always, what they're calling Jew haters, as we just proved to you, are simply people that support Palestine. In some cases, if not most, in my opinion. But here's what he said before being selected, if you can imagine that.
We will remove the jihadist sympathizers and Jew haters. We're going to remove the Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They own.
Okay, jihad supporters, same thing, by the way. Like, if you're going to say, okay, I made this point before. Oops. Oh, that's weird. Where is that playing from right now?
Want to destroy our.
What? Hold on, guys. That's crazy. I bet you. Oh, that's wild. Sorry, guys. There was another video playing in the background. I think that was StreamYard. I've been having the weirdest things with StreamYard. That's wild. Anyway, I guess it stopped, so it must have been StreamYard. Otherwise, we'd keep hearing my voice in the background. Where was I? Oh, so the point was, if you go back to ISIS, for example, right? You'd even understand, you would even logically get why the government might say it's illegal to support this publicly. So we're all going to go, yeah, it's a group that's killing people. Okay. But technically speaking, You didn't commit a crime by saying, I support what they do. We'd all go, that's wild. You support murdering people for no reason? Still not a crime, though, guys. That's what's important to think about. Now, I'm not saying I think it's good that people do that. I'm just saying that the idea that the government can start stepping in, using extreme examples, and start dictating what you can and can't think or say is just wildly beyond what we've ever believed this country is about. But we're seeing it in real time. So again, to jihad, which doesn't even mean what they pretend it means. It just means resistance, like anything else. And it could mean something serious, like revolution, could also mean something serious. The point is that at the end of the day, you have a right to think those things. And then also that they then call you those things when all you're doing is supporting Palestine, for example. These are unconstitutional claims, like putting you in jail for burning a flag, which has roundly been deemed to be your protected right, whether or not you think it's wrong. He doesn't care. Or guns first, due process later. How many examples do you really need, guys?
Country, and we will never let the horrors of October 7th be repeated here on American soil. We
the Israeli narrative. They're coming for you next, which has been October 7th ever since, or rather, November 9/11 ever since. This is the ongoing agenda, in my opinion. This one, I believe, was that it? Oh, that's right. I only had the two. I have the other two. They're in there. You can watch for yourselves. In fact, this is the link. I'll include that too, even though it's on this this tweet, which doesn't pop. It's supposed to pop up, of course. Not mine, though. Not on Twitter. No censorship, no suppression here. Here's all the clips. There's plenty more. All of them showing you the same things. These ones at the bottom. Get rid of your, shut down the internet. Anybody that says that's, there are people say free speech. Those people are idiots, is what he says. Same thing on the flag point. Those people are stupid. He's telling you you're stupid for caring about your free speech rights, or that you shouldn't expect those when, even though the Supreme Court has roundly ruled that is the case in those situations. Never mind. Doesn't matter. So, Benjamin Netanyahu, as always, just look at the guy's face on the still shot. There's something inherently evil about this guy. It's incredible. And you can just see it. That's my opinion, obviously, or maybe just because I know what he's capable of and done. I see it in his, but there's something you can just feel with these people. It's my opinion again, but what he's doing here, I think, is an important larger point. It's constant. This happens where at the worst possible moment, when Trump and the rest are out there trying to kind of defend or push back on or distract from what a lot of people are seeing. Like right now with the anti-Semitism point, or even before that, or there's lots of examples. But the point is, right at this moment, on this exact moment when this came out, it was, I would argue, the worst thing that had happened for people that were recognizing what was happening. I think Netanyahu does it on purpose. I think it's about continually demonstrating to his base that he'll come out and he'll say the thing they don't want us to know right in the moment, and all it does is show you that he's supporting Israel. He's on our side. Trump is the best friend Israel ever had when people over here are discussing whether that should be happening. It's important to see. I think it's more of a shame ritual almost, but at the same time, just trying to constantly show you who's actually in control. So I'll just read what he wrote, but you can watch it for yourself. Some of it anyway. He says, I want to thank Donald Trump for his unwavering support for Israel. During my recent visit to Washington, I said Donald Trump is the greatest friend Israel's ever had in the White House. And President Trump shows that friendship each and every day. He has shown it through his visionary plan for Gaza, which is a crime. It says this is a plan which Israel fully supports. Of course it does. That's been the plan the whole time. Take Gaza. Yeah, you're still doing the same illegal thing. He's shown it by sending us all the munitions that we were able to hold up. That's my point. That's an uncomfortable thing. That's violating promises to his own base. That's technically illegal. So my point is, him doing this is just putting a big, gigantic flag on it and going, look at this. Look at all the things he's doing for Israel at a time when that's probably not politically good for Trump. I mean, you get it. Keep reading it. It's the same thing. So I simply said, who needs enemies when you got friends like Netanyahu? Makes you really wonder why they would keep being friends with these people when all it is take, and detriment to your side of the conversation. Kim Iverson highlights the ADL, Greenblatt, with Stefanik. It's like, what are they doing for America right now? Well, every 30 seconds they're doing something. They're going to Israel. They're calling Netanyahu. They're working with the ADL. Everything they're doing is for something else. It goes, thank you, ADL and Greenblatt, for inviting me to address the Never Is Now Summit. Yeah, never again except for Palestine. There's so many Jewish people in the world that are going never again means right now. You're killing people right now. You're doing a genocide right now. And they're literally holding events. It's like never is now, as they, I guess, are pretending the never is stopping Hamas as they genocide the entire population. That's the point. That's gross. These people know what they're doing. It's disgusting. And it says the world's largest summit on combating anti-Semitism, because that's America first, right? And Kim Iverson rightly says the new Black Lives Matter movement. It's perfect. I'll include this great discussion with James Lee about his documentary. I mean, proving to you that the ADL is a spy agency. That's what it is. It's very, very clear. I might even have one. Let's see if I got it lined up. I'll play one right here. Yeah, here we go.
The investigation was done by the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. Among the data that came out was that they would spy on organizations that were critical of Israel, spy on organizations that were critical of South Africa, and they would pass that information on to Israel, and they passed the information on to South Africa. This was apartheid South Africa.
According to a declassified FBI document, one prominent investigator working on behalf of the ADL was Ray Bullock, a San Franciscan with the codename Cal, who posed as a small-time art dealer in the Castro district. Working clandestinely with Bullock was Thomas Gerard, a detective with the San Francisco Police Department's intelligence unit and a 3-year veteran of the CIA. Bamford wrote that, quote, Gerard would illegally supply Bullock with confidential data from the police and FBI computer files about Americans, many of them pro-Palestinian activists that were targets of the ADL. His reports were then submitted to the ADL's executive director in San Francisco, Richard Hersholt. Court documents ultimately exposed that Bullock and/or Hersholt admitted that the ADL or its agents gave information to the government of Israel and sold information to the government of South Africa, including information secretly collected from Jewish peace groups. Is that anti-Semitic?
Right. And let's not forget that just happened with Greenblatt got caught talking about how he had people inside Jewish Voices for Peace. So an Israeli organization has spies spying on Americans. Sure makes sense, right? Or you just highlighted right there. Like, or, you know, by the way, before I forget, interesting how he mentioned the same location we're talking about in regard to where these files were held, right? Where they're going, oh, it turns out it was that location and they held the files. Interesting overlap. That turns out the location that was exposing the ADL spying on people. Yeah. Wonder if there's a connection there. What do you think? Interesting clip though, right? I mean, the overall point being simply that they're spying on you through American institute, or at least feigning to be American institutions for the interest of a foreign government. It never stops. Now, Francisco Albanese points out an overlap to this. This is from Germany. Martin, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, says Germany's anti-Semitism commissioner, see, this is where we're going. It's the same thing. Felix Klein praises Trump's Gaza ethnic cleansing plan. Right. So the German anti-Semitism commissioner, who's, you know, this position has risen up over the years because of Germany's history going back to the Holocaust, and are now praising another Holocaust, claiming it's a mere temporary resettlement to destroy an entire civilization and forcefully move them somewhere else. No big deal. It says, while you're renovating your house, you're not sleeping in it either. Trump said himself that Gazans won't return. Now, so what he's trying to say there is, don't worry, you're going to be let back into your home. No, they're very clear. Israel said not a chance. And Trump publicly said they will not. I mean, I bet you even have that article to come up. Yep. Oh, wait. No, that's not the one. One more try. Guess not. Nope. Oh, well. I thought I had it, but I guess not. I thought it would pop up with the word return. Ultimately, the point is German's anti-Semitism commissioner supporting a genocide or anti-Semitism. And I said, I don't know if I said that wrong, but she says, shocking, if anyone needed further evidence of what she's going to go on to say, what we're dealing with, of what weaponization of anti-Semitism means, look no further. This is a prime example of how morally corrupted, deeply racist, and politically weaponized, quote, the fight against anti-Semitism has become in some places. It's what we're dealing with right now. I'll show it called a racist for simply pointing that out. Now, I'm not going to play these just because I want to kind of wrap. The point is, David Icke's highlighting this clip, which I'm sure we played before. It really disgusts me. This is RFK Jr. just rattling off points that we can literally prove aren't true. From the pay to slay thing that Robert's broken down many times over. I mean, not even to point out that we're talking about the Palestinian Authority, which is not, that's working for Israel, guys. So that even makes sense if there were some actions of it. The point is, Robert broke down that that's a deception. I'm not going to get into it all. The point is he goes through many examples of trying to highlight why Palestinians are bad and gross and racist. And they're not, he's going lie after lie after lie, whether he knows that or not. He goes on then to say this one. I think I might have these short ones. It's the last one. This is the one he says, the Palestinian people are the most pampered people in the history of the world. That's what he said. I mean, think about us at the time he said it even. It really is disgusting because the reality is they were being murdered. Children were starving to death and we're going most pampered people. And now maybe that's what he believed because he's so completely out of the know of what's going on, or he's being told a lie. Now today I'm leaning towards the latter. But here's the last one, and you've seen this before. This was his response when asked point blank by Dave Smith. And as Anomaly says, when I first saw the clip, I stopped caring about RFK's campaign. I mean, it's, again, if you're an objective person, and if you can just simply look at what's obviously happening in Gaza, this statement speaks volumes. Or rather, the lack of statement.
You have concerns about the level of Israeli influence in our politics here in the United States of America?
Tick-tock. Tick-tock.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a politician in political office, so I don't see much of that.
Disgusting cop-out.
United States of America.
Look at the gap. Look at how long. That's not, I don't know.
I don't.
That's crazy. Now, Nicholas Fuentes says, they said it didn't matter that RFK Jr. is owned by Israel because he'll just be doing health stuff. Now we see HHS secretary, he has declared that anti-Semitism is a public health emergency. Funny how that works. Here he is with this maniac Shmuley, who they seem to have pulled distance to each other because Shmuley got kind of, I mean, he was making everybody look stupid, even more so than the average Israeli maniac, because he was out there. I mean, it was embarrassing. His whole spin off with Candace Owens. Well, let's not forget that this guy was literally handling RFK Jr. He was speaking for him at areas where RFK Jr. was the speaker. He was standing up and answering for him on stage. That's not hard to see because the Shmuley guy is a blustering moron. I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, in a sense where he's like, doesn't recognize that him taking answers for RFK Jr. is obvious, but who knows? Here is Stefanik, U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Elise Stefanik says the anti-Semites at the UN better buckle up because I'm coming. Oh, good. So now she's going after people in the international community for opinions? I mean, where are we right now? And how do we not have people in this country that are screaming about this? Maybe we do. I'm just making a point.
Message for Turtle Bay is this. Hear me clearly, right here and now. The anti-Semites at the United Nations better buckle up because I'm coming. The university presidents were just a warm-up, and believe me, anyone who knows me knows that I'm just getting started.
And she got caught lying more than once. Doesn't matter, though, because this is a political agenda that's got momentum. So who cares what the facts are? Sort of like DOGE, you know? Look at it. She's got 2 pins now, right? America first, though. America first. I don't see an American flag in there. That's funny.
Under President Trump, as United States ambassador to the United Nations, the days of propping up organizations that run counter to our interest are long gone. We will no longer fund terrorism, anti-Semitism.
Right. But we're funding the ones in Syria right now. We're funding Israel's ongoing genocide. We're continuing to fund groups in all sorts of locations. But we're not funding terrorism because all we're claiming terrorism are what the Democrats were funding through woke agendas. Right? I mean, it's just insane that we can't obviously see that this is silly. Like they're going to declare, like on top of that, guys, how about this? Are you now publicly saying they're funding terrorism and no one's held accountable for that? Are you genuinely telling us that Biden was funding terrorists, but no one's in jail? We can't be this stupid, guys. This is silly. It's obvious. And they're actually this stupid if they think we're going to fall for it.
And anti-Israel hate. That stops immediately. and impose sanctions on the illegitimate International Criminal Court, which is targeting Israel.
Ah, good. So now the international dynamic in general, the international law, the ICC, the ICJ, all the human rights groups, everybody, anybody out there calling a genocide, we're going to go after him for Israel.
With anti-Semitic attacks. And at the United Nations, we took the decisive action to defund UNRWA, the pro-Hamas terrorist front group who committed atrocities.
When she's speaking to a bunch of Israeli maniacs, that's what, the point is UNRWA, as even Smotrich just admitted to, was about the right of return. That just by default became a refugee agency because it took 76 years and it still hasn't gone back yet. You can look this up. It's very simple. The UN's written about it a million times. She's either that stupid, that uninformed, or that dishonest. You can pick, probably both. You know that UNRWA is about returning people to their original territory because in the reality of war, after the war goes away, which has arguably happened in the kind of the many, spans of time where there wasn't ongoing conflict between Gaza. But the point is, at that moment, you should have allowed them to go back to the territory that you'd occupied. They always had some narrative or they, funded the Hamas terror group. This is how it works, right? So at the end of the day, if you're funding Hamas terrorists that are attacking people, then you're responsible for that, no matter how that works out. Over the years, if it shifted, then I've gone over this a million times. What they're doing is trying to convince you that the only things that are bad are what Israel points at. Not what we're funding, not that we're faking terrorist acts, not that we're invading other countries. No, it's only the people that we don't like. So go after Iran, go after the Houthis, go after all the people that are actually standing up against the obvious genocide. But not ISIS, though. Who cares about ISIS, though? They don't worry about the leading group that we want. No, they're good. Let them stay because clearly we know what that is today. Look at Syria. How do we not see this? How does anybody not see this? And maybe we all do. Maybe the only people that are pretending it's not there are the people that are bought off, controlled, or actual Zionists. Glenn Greenwald highlighting again Elise Stefanik, who is saying, under President Trump, colleges and universities will be held accountable. Anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated. Again, so this is textbook unconstitutional. You're not allowed to be anti-Israel now? You can be anti-U.S. You can be anti-Canada. You can't be anti-Israel in a country where we have free ideological freedom. Obviously, then we don't. Not confusing. If you're an honest conservative, this should make you should be screaming about this. I mean, especially since we're talking about the Democrats and woke and cancel culture, right? Right? And so we're supposed to be fighting that, correct? Scream about this. They are telling you you're not allowed to decide for yourself about a foreign country. How is that confusing? Glenn says, look at these people. Elise Stefanik proclaims anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated. You're allowed to hate the U.S., Canada, China, Peru, anyone you want, except Israel, though. The free speech right wants to censor hate speech for one foreign country. And let's be clear, guys, so do the Democrats. That's the whole point. If you can't see by now what that shows you, I really don't think you want to see it. And I get it. It's kind of unnerving. He goes on to say, please stop lying about what Elise Stefanik said out of loyalty to Trump or Israel. The tweet is right there. Like, this is what I deal with too. No, you did. It's just not. It's just very clear what's going on. There's no air in that conversation. You're allowed to be anti-Israel. You're allowed to be anti-whatever you want. If you act out in violence because of it, well, then you're committing a crime. Everything's already in place. All they're trying to do is stop you from saying what you want about Israel. Say whatever you want about anything else, but not Israel. You know that old statement, right? To know who controls you, look at who you're not allowed to criticize. It's a very important one. Again, Kash Patel saying, hurry up and we got to prioritize Israel. This is the current leadership. Here is that clip I was talking about. As Lord Miles official, not familiar, it says, Israel doesn't influence U.S., bro.
A serious debate on the issues that matter most.
We have anti-Semitism all over our college campuses.
We will stand with Israel
to support Israel with whatever they need, whenever they need it. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel.
The founding vision of Israel is America is here, no matter what it is you need at any time, to preserve the state of Israel. With a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition.
Jewish students across the country are threatened.
Surge of anti-Semitism across this country. Anti-Semitism. Any campus that allows for anti-Semitism, you should lose your federal funding today. I would deport you. No, it's the anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control.
All this is unconstitutional. Everything they're talking about action-wise. Deportation, major crime. All right, that is, especially since people who are here on visas or even illegal aliens, by the way, are protected under the Constitution. It's amazing. Every time this comes up, we get people. Glenn Greenwald did a major breakdown on this. I've been saying this for years. It's easily, look it up. We're talking about inalienable, God-given rights. Are we pretending that God only gave Americans rights? The point is, if you look at the context, it's about that this is for human beings, whether or not we ever wrote this down. Now, whether you believe their intentions or not, or even know, the point is that clearly inalienable means for everybody. And then on top of that, we can see the Supreme Court has roundly ruled that. Now, especially people here on visas, because you're not breaking any laws. You are very clearly protected. You have free speech rights. You can't be deported because you said something that's protected under the Constitution. But people who are here illegally, for example, there's a little bit of change in that because you're breaking the law. But the point is, you break the law, you don't lose your rights. Same conversation. So if we understand, which it's right, that does apply to people that exist in this country, or really anywhere, quite frankly, then you understand that everybody has the right to free speech, and you can't have that deprived of you. So if you say it breaks the law, which is what they're now trying to claim, why would they be deported? Wouldn't you put them in jail? Is the crime now deportation for saying the wrong thing? I mean, clearly it applies to one country in one context. It's just not hard to see. I know you guys all see it.
Jewish students and synagogues.
Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism. The Jewish people
Providing Israel.
That was the point right there. Just as awful as racism? I mean, you realize that's not an accident. That's it is. What else would you call it? Is it not racism? So if you tried to say anti-Semitism is not racism, people would lose their minds. But now they're able to say it's just as bad. It's its own thing. It's a separate, special problem. You think that's by accident? It is literally racism. It is like any other form of anti-anything. It is racism, or rather, under the guise of a religion. Or even that's the point, though. It's technically not a religion. It's about Semites, which is it's just so funny. The point is not what the terms mean, but how it's applied. If they're claiming it's about people who hate Jewish people, well, then it's another form of racism, and that's how they're applying the logic to it. It's actually an important point to flesh out. We already made the point, though. Semites are including Palestinians and mostly not Israelis, so it's all a game. But either way, it's about trying to make it into something unique. Now you get the point on the video. It goes on for like another 3 minutes of just more and more and more of the same statements from all the Republican candidates. Trump, you can see him already. But this is the overlap to this. So this was on this 4th of March, and it simply says, Trump threatens to pull federal funds for U.S. schools allowing illegal protests. Oh, okay. I was already deciding I was going to jump past this anyway, but I just accidentally highlighted everything. The point is, what's an illegal protest? Well, are we now illegalizing certain kinds of protests? And what would make those different than the others? Same point, not hard to see. Illegal protest. Okay, so why is it illegal? Because you've passed some arbitrary law, which is unconstitutional, so therefore Mayberry versus Madison Supreme Court ruling is null and void. But they don't care about that. A law that is repugnant to the Constitution. So they're saying, we've had a law that says you can't say mean things about Israel, which they then say is about Jewish people in general, even though that's not the same thing. And they say, well, if you stand up and do the protest for Palestine, we call that racism. We call that anti-Semitism. We passed a law that says any anti-Semitism is a problem. Therefore, you're now in trouble. Simple, right? Even though the reality is you can't. I mean, if they just passed a law today that said you're not allowed to say any word, we would all go, well, you can't just do that. You can't just write a law that says you're not allowed to scream this phrase. Weird how we don't apply the same logic when it comes to Israel. This is him doing what Israel wants. You are telling us we can't protest against a foreign country who is doing things, who has, by the way, the largest track record historically of committing one crime after another as far back as you want to look. For 76 plus years, this government, this entity, the Zionist structure has been destroying things around the world. And you want to understand that? Really? Just look at what the U.S. has done because of that. Every war we've been fighting has been for Israel, and I'll play that clip again, Dad. High Impact Flick says no school should be federal funded. Here's what Trump said. All federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Illegal, that's the one they stick on. Well, he said illegal. He's not talking about just saying word. Well, yeah, he is, though, because he's claiming that is illegal now. That's the game, and you guys are falling for it. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. That's a crime. Just because, okay, even if it was technically an actual crime that wasn't repugnant to the Constitution, why would you be deported? You can murder somebody and you'll go to jail. You won't get deported. Suddenly, saying a mean thing about Israel is more severe than murder. You're going to be deported out of the country. Simple. It's obvious to see what's happening here. American students will be permanently expelled. Now so if you come out and you say the most racist thing in the world against anybody else, no thing. I mean, maybe you get looked bad on in the school. But if you come out and say racist thing against Israel, you're going to be expelled from your school as an American. I don't know how many more ways we can make this clear. Then it says no masks, which is funny because isn't that the same thing? Like I made the same point before, whether it was COVID related or not. Why does he get the right to say you don't get to wear a mask? I'm not talking about even you make it a COVID mask. You can make it a face mask or make it a face cover, like a ski mask, for example. Why is that a crime all of a sudden? I mean, obviously the idea is that people both left and right, we've seen them all. They come out with these masks with Patriot Front or Antifa, whatever else. They come out with their masks. So what? It's not a crime to cover your face. This is in the interest of de-anonymization in the same direction they're going, and they're getting you to cheer for it. Thank you for your attention on this matter. He says, high impact flicks, no school should get federal funding in the first place. I agree. What the hell is an illegal protest? He said, why should someone be jailed for exercising a right? No matter what the context is, right? Why would you not allow to protest something? That is a fundamental right. So here we are again with direct, in textbook unconstitutional acts. He says, if you're not free to wear a mask when they once threatened us, that's the point. They once threatened you, both administrations, to wear one. Now they're threatening you not to. Michael Tracy says, GOP free speech. You can say retarded again, but you can't protest Israel. It's funny. Michael Dalakis says, serious question. Do you think protests should be ended and people criminally charged when they turn violent? He says, are you under the impression that police currently lack the ability to arrest and charge people when they commit acts of physical violence? Well played. That has nothing to do with decreeing certain categories of protest, anti-Israel, anti-U.S. foreign policy, to be wholly illegal. See, they're playing with the idea, should they be allowed to get away with violence? No, man. Where did it even come from? There's already crimes on the books that people could be held accountable for if they commit violence. They're trying to create a special category of things that already exist for a foreign country that actually go after things that are not illegal. People just don't want to see it. True Stream Media responds to the same thing and says, we already have laws against violence and property destruction. So what exactly is an illegal protest? Everybody with a brain and a little bit of honesty can already see how dangerous this is. Dr. Michael Rechtenwald says, and because criticizing Israel is illegal on college campuses, in many cases it is, I'll play the clip in a second, even though that's unconstitutional and should never exist in the first place, all anti-Israel protests are illegal, right? That's what they're saying. Because it's illegal here, it'll be legal everywhere. American students will be expelled if they protest Israel's war crimes. This is treasonous on the part of Trump, this imbecile, Elise Stefanik, and the entire government. It's true. I agree, I should say. Laura Loomer, though, wants you to know that the CCP has infiltrated the GOP. The GOP has a China problem. And then Pat wants to show you how much she agrees. China is everywhere, clearly. Now, you know why I like this? Because they're not making it about Jewish people. It's about Israeli lobbying, about Zionism paying our politicians to do what they want them to. Because a lot of times people try to make it about anybody who's also Jewish. And there's examples of people. I mean, it's not only about Jewish overlap. There's plenty of Jewish people that are calling this out. There's far more Christian Zionists today than there are Jewish Zionists. So to pretend it's only about one religion is you being caught falling for the deception, in my opinion. I could certainly be wrong. I think it's obvious, though. The point here is that almost every single politician, in fact, I mean, other than Thomas Massie, I think it's pretty much everybody, is being funded in some way by a foreign government. We can see how that's being played out right now. But Laura says, China problem. Her job seems to be to deflect at the moment needing to away from Israel. She's over here batting away. Oh, the Azov movement? No, over there. Don't look over here, right? Same thing right now with is what she does. It's embarrassing. Same thing. Somebody responds with a good clip and says, pretty sure it's not against the law to criticize China. Mic drop, right? Here's the clip.
Show you something, and because I know what you're thinking. I know what you're probably thinking right now. You're thinking, oh, sure, Rick Sanchez, of course. What you're probably talking about is one of those obscure state laws like the one they have in Alaska that says if you accidentally kill a moose, you have to eat it. That's actually a law in Alaska, by the way. There's one in Georgia that says it's illegal to sleep on a boat for more than 30 days. True. No, we're not talking about an obscure law. What we're talking about is an Israeli loyalty oath law that is becoming so common in the United States, it's now pervasive. Take a look at the map. You see the red states? See all of those red states? 26 states have enacted this loyalty oath legislation. And let me show you the other one, the navy blue ones. The blue ones you see there? That's where this law is now pending. So 26 acted on, passed, 13 pending, only 11 states, the light blue ones you see there, the baby blue or the light blue, those are the ones where you can boycott Israel and, you know, criticize Israel if you want. Again, look, it bears repeating. There is no such law keeping you from denouncing or boycotting the United States of America or even advocating causes that harm the U.S. economically. But there are laws from doing that against Israel. Curious.
Yeah. Curious to say the least. Very obvious, I would say. Now, here's a couple of random articles. They're discussing this. This is from a week ago. We investigate. Why do 38 states have laws requiring, quote, loyalty pledge to Israel? You know, if you think this is fake, I recommend you take the time to look into it. We talked about this during was it Hurricane Harvey, where people that were getting assistance from the U.S. government using your tax dollars were forced to sign something that said they would not boycott Israel. It's just about the most obvious thing I've ever seen in my life. And this is why I think we all see it right now. And why that shows us that what we think seems to not matter right now. And that says everything. That's not to say the same as we can't change it. But until we realize right now that what we're doing is not affecting the government outcome, until we see that and recognize the schism there, that we're not influencing, we won't be able to change it. Acting like we're going to go vote and check a box and think they're going to do what we say or even care what we say. Houston Chronicle, 2018. To protect Israel, Texas sacrificed the Constitution. Abbott was one of the earliest ones to roll out one of these loyalty pledges or even the idea of anti-BDS laws. There are multiple examples. Now, I want to highlight this overlapping. So you got these people pushing about the bad Columbia protests, right? Again, you can prove that these were largely put on by Jewish organizations. The reason that's not included by all these Tom Cotton screamers is because they know that ruins the Israel-funded point. But let's get into the reality of this, guys, that goes much broader than just keeping you scared of, creating a dynamic where you do not criticize Israel. It's actually, on top of that, the technocratic globalist rollout that we all see coming. And what they're using this for is not just scooping up information, but literally allowing a foreign country to surveil you. We already saw the ADL point. Here is from February of this year. Campus police are using Israeli spy tech to crack down on student protests. So let me ask you this. Is the student protest what they're going after or a means to the end? To get a foot in the door to be able to actually surveil, because they know the young generation is the problem here. As Greenblatt himself said, it's not a left-right problem. It's a generation problem. So they are now spying on your children. And your government is allowing that. And on top of that, the Israeli spy tech has been shown by Whitney and plenty of others to be invasive. They are literally opening back doors and creating. I mean, guys, what do you think Elon and the rest are doing behind the scenes that we can't see? I'm not saying I know for sure. That's my worry. With all of this happening, all of the oversight, I mean, there's 100 different reasons for us to be concerned right now. Here's the nation. Israel's war on American student activists. It's real, guys, and it's very documentable. Let's go back. This is 2023. It's not new. Now, Dropsite News covered this. Israeli Deputy Knesset Speaker calls for killing all Palestinian men in Gaza, wiping out Jenin. He says, who's innocent in Gaza? Civilians went out and slaughtered people, so kill everybody. He's being very clear about that. Children, women, they're all bad. That's what he's saying that's like in Congress. Okay? That's like Lindsey Graham, whoever else sitting there going, kill all the children, and that not being a big deal. Dan Sheehan points out, Americans, I'll say it again for the 1,000th time, American Zionists will condemn powerless teenagers chanting from the river to the sea on college campuses and then ignore the cartoonishly genocidal statements made day after day after day by Israeli government politicians. Just really absorb that, guys, and recognize how ridiculous it is. But again, most of you here are already aware of this, and the people that need to hear it will be algorithmically boxed out of ever hearing this information. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to show them. That's how this gets there. Last, you have all these mainstream alternative media stooges out here pretending like they care about free speech while then cheering on a free speech slaughter. And it says, this is Charlie Kirk showing him saying, stop all the funding to these colleges because they say things we don't like. Charlie says, President Trump lays down the new rules. What's funny is you guys, it doesn't matter. I was going to go into another point. He says, for more federal funding on schools that allow illegal protests to continue, foreign students sent home, American students expelled. Yeah, just not even a momentary consideration about how those things are against the law, unconstitutional, and no mask to hide the identity of criminals. Oh, so they're all criminals now by default without even knowing? Like, these are the authoritarians pretending to be people wanting freedom, guys. Blakely says, I thought you were still pretending to care about free speech. You clowns are literally celebrating them making it illegal to criticize Israel. And I think Charlie knows, doesn't care. These people are enemies of free speech and enemies of America. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, and you could argue they don't see themselves as enemies of America. Maybe in their mind, what Israel's doing is America. Who knows how they look at it? End of the day, that's what they represent to me. Now, lastly, just to end, Israel, this is from anti-war. Israel preparing, quote, this is what they call it, the hell plan for Gaza that would cut electricity and water. Now, it looks like they've already cut 2 desalination plants in Gaza, so that's already happening. No one cares, at least not in the corporate media or the mainstream alternative media or any. This is not stopping. Now, if you don't remember, what's almost disgustingly sad about this is that B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group, back when they got caught raping people in prisons, came out with a report called Welcome to Hell. The Israeli prison system is a network of torture camps. That's what they called this. Israel comes out with their own plan called the Hell Plan. You can't make this up. These people are sick. Not every Israeli or every Jew, but very clearly the Israeli government that's leading this disgusting plan. And they're going to be cutting everything off and acting like that doesn't show you, like we've always been telling you they're doing. Brian Grimm, Israel considering cutting off water, which I already see is happening. You have people in the Jerusalem Post, rather Ben Gvir being covered by Jerusalem Post, literally calling one of the released hostages Hamas. As she jokingly but rightly says, hostages are Hamas. That's how dumb this has gotten. Ben Gvir accuses a freed hostage of echoing Hamas propaganda. Why? Because he literally told his story of what happened. These people are lost, guys. Nothing is off the table. So when you think about that, if they're willing to attack the people they've always been trying to fight to save, they claim, in the front of everybody, you don't think they're going to do whatever they want to do to you and your country and your politicians? Guys, it's obvious. Now, recognize how gross this is as they go after a Holocaust survivor. I actually thought this was a line they wouldn't cross. British police are interrogating an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor that we've played a video from many times. His name is Stephen Kapos, after he simply laid flowers to honor Palestinian children. Here's the article. Police questioning pro-Gaza Holocaust survivor for carrying a bunch of flowers. He's been arrested. Now, I don't know if he's been released yet. I didn't, this was as I was finishing. Here's the clip we played many times. I'll actually end with that, and I'll play the final clip as well. I'm hoping that this reaches some people, guys. I mean, I don't know how this is not the most obvious thing in the world. I'm getting to the point where I don't even know how it's possible. I mean, I know some people don't care, maybe not see it, maybe just don't care to look. But can we all just agree that it seems like most everybody, even in both sides of the partisanship, in some level are watching to see this, and now we're drifting dangerously into a point to where it's almost like the mask is coming off. I'm just hoping people can question this stuff. Look at the evidence, ask yourself what's happening, and let's not start pulling away from the obvious reality that what he did today is, not just RFK, but the administration was unconstitutional. They're violating your rights. Now, also deviating from many of the main promises that they said they would accomplish. Can't you not? Isn't that enough of a red flag to at least start questioning everything? I'd like to believe so. Thank you for tuning in today, guys. I really appreciate your support. As always, the more support you give, the more we can continue to grow, write more content. Your support means everything in the world. We wouldn't exist without you. As I've said often, you are the last American vagabond. Thank you for tuning in, guys. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get that clip. Forgot I was going to grab that. I think, yeah, I remember what it is, actually. It's right here. And with the clip of him first, and then we'll do the other clip to finish. All right. See you next time, guys.
A Holocaust survivor, my message to the brave student protesters in America is just keep doing it. Don't give up. We are doing exactly the same. And in the long term, we are going to prevail. I'm out from the beginning at every march. A small group of survivors and descendants of survivors demonstrate disagreement with the use of the Holocaust experience as a cover by the Zionists and the State of Israel.
This starts, and it's really fascinating to go back. It starts in 1996 with Netanyahu, who wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism. And the thesis of the book is quite straightforward and very dangerous. He says, you know, there's Hamas, there's Hezbollah, they oppose Israel. It's not good for us to fight them directly. That won't work. What we need to do is topple the governments that back them. So what we need is regime change throughout the Middle East. And he actually gave a long list of 7 countries that included Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Lebanon. And systematically, the United States has done Netanyahu's bidding for almost 30 years now, going to war with every one of them except for the big one that Netanyahu so much longs for, which is the war directly between the United States and Iran.